Chapter 953. Thanks to Hua Tianxian, she was becoming more and more familiar with these branded items. Hua Tianxian, that rich missy, wore expensive luxury goods from head to toe. Every time she got a new bag, she would show it to her, saying that it was a new model from a certain brand or a limited edition. From time to time, she would show off her understanding of fashion. Even if she wasn't interested in this area, she still remembered it vividly. Pak Yuan's ex-wife was indeed wearing inferior goods from head to toe. She would never judge a person's character based on their appearance, but the person in front of her was an exception. Because she knew the other person's character first. At this moment, when Jing Yunzhao said this, Tan Shi's face turned red. She was even a little angry out of embarrassment. Brother Fan. She looked at Boss Fan with grievance, expressing the unwillingness in her heart. For the past 2 years, Fan Liqin had been average to her. He would occasionally come over. Every time she tried her best, she could only get a little bit of living expenses. During the most difficult times, she even had to sell the things she had gotten from Fan Liqin. Thus, at present, the only decent equipment in the house was the one she was wearing. However, she didn't expect to be dissected word by word in this kind of situation. Her face was burning with pain. Fan Liqin looked at Tan Shi with some anger. He glanced at her clothes and felt a little disgusted. This woman was really something. He had clearly told her in advance that he was going to take her out. Why didn't she dress up properly? Now, she was embarrassing him in front of Pak Yuan. Tan Shi is used to saving money, so she doesn't like to dress gorgeously. However, little beauty, what you said reminded me. As he spoke, he looked at the jade and said with a smile, wrap this jade up. I want it. Once he said this, the salesperson was delighted. Wait. Jing Yunzhao suddenly spoke, his gaze provoking, Boss Fan, have you forgotten? I just said that I would get Director Bai to buy it for me. What right do you have to fight with him? What right do I have? Little girl, how can he compare to me? I also told you that he can't afford it. Fan Liqin immediately said. She was just a little girl, so he didn't take her seriously at all. At most, his heart was itching because of her appearance. Do you think you can't afford it just because you say so? Wasn't it just 19 million? My big brother Bai bid 20 million. Who says I can't beat an old man like you? Jing Yunzhao suddenly became aggressive and unreasonable. If they were business rivals, Fan Liqin would definitely be cautious and give way if he could. However, it just had to be Pak Yuan and a little girl. Bai Yuan was once his defeated opponent, so he didn't feel any sense of crisis from the start. However, Jing Yunzhao's old man actually made him lose his temper. It turned out that Pak Yuan was younger than him. Little white, what kind of ability is it to make a little girl speak? Say it yourself, can you afford it? Fan Liqin coldly snorted. Pak Yuan wasn't stupid and immediately said, since she likes it, I'll buy it for her even if I have to go bankrupt. Is that so? Why don't you take out 20 million and show it to me? Fan Liqin looked like he was watching a show. Jing Yunzhao raised his head and casually took out a card and handed it to the salesperson. Boss Fan, you only know how to talk. Isn't it just paying the bill? You'll know if it's real or not after you pay. However, a person like you who only knows how to talk big should scram from here. You're just trying to puff yourself up at your own cost. Who knows, the clothes you're wearing might have been hired. After a few words, Fan Liqin was quite angry. This was the first time he had been mocked for being poor in his life. Seeing the other party like this, he was indeed very confident. If the item was really bought by Pak Yuan, he would lose his face. After all, it was just a piece of jade. 20 million was nothing to him. Chapter 954. Fan Liqin thought about it again. Although the jade was expensive, with his status, it wasn't like he couldn't return it. Even if he returned it openly and embarrassed himself, he could still buy it and resell it to someone else, or use it in a crucial place. After all, it was a good item that could hold its value. He wouldn't lose out if he bought it. I already said that I wanted to buy this item just now. Return the card to her now. I'll pay for it, Boss Fan said to the salesperson impatiently. The salesperson was in a difficult position, but Fan Liqin had already stuffed his card into her hands. Jing Yunzhao glanced at Pak Yuan, and Pak Yuan immediately understood. I'll bid 21 million. The item belongs to me, Pak Yuan said directly. The price of this place was clearly marked, so it was obviously not suitable for an auction. However, at this moment, the situation was a little tense. The salesperson didn't know what to do, so she quickly called the manager over. When the manager heard this, he thought about it carefully. He wasn't a fool. How could he not earn money? At worst, he could donate the extra money he earned when the time came and build a reputation for the branch. Besides, the two of them were willing to do this, and they weren't the ones who forced them. They weren't worried that they would go back on their word. The two of them had made such a big fuss that it wouldn't be good for their reputation if they went back on their word. Besides, their boss wasn't someone to be trifled with. Even if they returned the extra money, they would still leave some benefits in their hands. What they needed to do now was to resolve the current dispute. Little Bai, don't you know how to retreat in the face of difficulties? 21 million. Heh, even if I sold you, I wouldn't be able to afford it. Fan Liqin said sarcastically. Boss Fan, back then, you secretly stole my woman. Now, I don't want her, but I can still protect the other things. No matter what, I won't give you this jade today. In fact, if you take a fancy to anything that originally belonged to me in the future, I won't give it to you. Pak Yuan said coldly. Half of it was an act, and the other half was sincere. No one was willing to suffer such humiliation. With these words, Fan Liqin's attitude became much more serious. Thinking back to how Pak Yuan had shone so brightly under him, to the point where he was about to outshine his boss, Fan Liqin gritted his teeth and coldly snorted, "Your things. Back then, even you worked for me. 22 million. I'll add another 1 million. I know it's not appropriate for your store to take more money from customers, so I can guarantee that as long as you sell this to me, I will definitely not return it. Moreover, the excess money will be donated by your jewelry store. What do you think?" Pak Yuan explained. This thought made the manager's nerves relax, and he quickly nodded. Fan Liqin's face turned ugly. "You're good, but who do you think I, Fan Liqin, am? You can't even fork out this small amount of money. 25 million, 28 million. Pak Yuan did not see Jing Yunzhao's signal and continued. 2,900. Fan Liqin gritted his teeth. 30 million. 35 million. The person took a deep breath. He, Fan Liqin, could lose to anyone, but not to Pak Yuan. 40 million. Pak Yuan's expression seemed to be somewhat nervous, and his words were somewhat hesitant. Fan Liqin's heart ached, but after thinking about it carefully, he had connections. He could think of a way later, so there was no need to be stingy now. Thus, he directly said, 50 million. With these words, the surrounding people's eyes almost popped out. Jing Yunzhao rubbed the tip of his nose. Pak Yuan looked and gritted his teeth with a pained expression. You! Boss Fan, I don't believe you can take out this money. This money is nothing to me. With that said, he swept a victorious glance at the manager. The manager's trembling hand immediately swiped the card, and 50 million was immediately transferred out. However, your store shouldn't bully your customers. We just agreed that the remaining 31 million would be donated by your store. Shouldn't there be a written pledge? Jing Yunzhao suddenly changed the topic. Chapter 955. The moment Jing Yunzhao said that she wanted a written agreement, Fan Liqin's eyebrows immediately furrowed. However, the situation was so chaotic that it couldn't be resolved. With so many people watching, it would be strange if he didn't agree to sign the agreement. After thinking about it, it wasn't that he couldn't agree to the donation. He had been running the company for so long and had done a lot of good deeds. Sometimes, he had to be prepared on the surface. As for what would happen after that, it wasn't something that Pak Yuan and the little girl could understand. Manager, please print out 2 copies of the written agreement, Fan Liqin immediately said. Jing Yunzhao's mouth curled, and his eyes revealed some shock and admiration. He deliberately said, Boss Fan, you are really generous. Brother Bai, you are not as generous as Boss Fan in this aspect. And this auntie, you are even luckier to be able to follow someone like Boss Fan. It makes one envious. Tan Shi's expression turned ugly. She was the same age as Pak Yuan, and this little girl called Pak Yuan brother, but she called her auntie. What was the meaning of this? She was clearly saying that she was old. However, putting aside this form of address, she was in a good mood. After following Fan Liqin for so many years, Boss Fan had given her very few benefits. In the end, she couldn't even see her son often. Sometimes, she couldn't help but regret it. However, now that Fan Liqin had actually bought a good piece of jade for her in front of so many people, all these years of hard work had been worth it. For an item worth 19 million, even if it was sold at a discount, this amount of money would allow her to live comfortably for the rest of her life. Fan Liqin had plenty of money, so she had to work even harder in the future. Not long after, the jade was placed in a brocade box and packaged. The manager carefully handed the item over, and Fan Liqin also signed the donation certificate. Fan Liqin looked at Pak Yuan with a look of disdain, like a rooster that had won a fight. Thank you, Brother Fan. Tan Shi called out flatteringly, and reached out with both hands to take the item. Fan Liqin glanced at her and thought for a moment before handing the jade over. After all, they were outside, so he had to put on an act to prove his generosity. However, he had already hinted to the manager, and he believed that he knew what he meant. Therefore, this piece of jade had to be protected. If it broke, it would be for naught. Hold it carefully, Fan Liqin said as he handed it over. Tan Shi's eyebrows immediately raised. Her entire body was brimming with joy. Brother Fan, you're the best. Fan. He replied, but he couldn't hide the disdain in the corner of his eyes. This woman didn't even know what he was thinking, so how could she expect him to take care of her? However, thinking back to when he first met Tan Shi, she was still somewhat intelligent and sensible. She was by Pak Yuan's side and looked extremely virtuous. She immediately understood when Pak Yuan looked at her. Many people in the company said that the two of them had a tacit understanding and were extremely compatible. At that time, he was indeed somewhat moved, but because he didn't have anyone by his side who could understand his thoughts so well, he put in some effort for her. But he didn't expect that after this woman left Bai Yuan, she was nothing. She didn't have the slightest bit of intelligence left, and her shortcomings were completely exposed. She was no different from those unscrupulous women outside, which made him extremely disappointed. Tan Shi held the box tightly in her hands, and Fan Liqin felt his entire body become much more comfortable. This money seemed to have been spent, but in reality, it wasn't. He had gained face in front of Pak Yuan, so he felt very refreshed. Little Bai, if you don't have money, then don't bring a woman out shopping. Look, how embarrassing is it now? If I were you, I would want to find a hole to hide in. How could I be so thick-skinned as to continue staying here? After Fan Liqin said that, he said to Jing Yunzhao, "Little beauty, keep my business card well. If there's anything, call me. I hate men who make women feel wronged. I will definitely support you." Chapter 956. After Fan Liqin finished speaking, he laughed a few more times. It sounded extremely savage. Pak Yuan pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Jing Yunzhao was also very quiet. Seeing that the two of them had quieted down, Fan Liqin felt relieved. "Tan Shi, go to the car and wait for me. I still have some things to discuss with Xiao Bai." Naturally, he wanted to know where Pak Yuan was at. Once wasn't enough. In the future, Pak Yuan would have to live under his shadow every day and every year. When Tan Shi heard this, she immediately nodded in agreement. She really wanted to take this piece of jade and disappear immediately. 19 million. Even if she earned it for the rest of her life, it was impossible. She immediately lifted her feet and walked out. Jing Yunzhao's eyes flashed and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. When Tan Shi walked to the door and was about to step out, a small stone suddenly popped out of his hand and rushed directly at her calf. The stone was thrown out when no one was paying attention. It was impossible to find any evidence. Tan Shi was in high spirits, but her calf suddenly throbbed with pain. She immediately threw herself over. The red box in her arms flashed like a red swallow. Under everyone's gazes, it was thrown a few meters away. The entire box was smashed open and the jade inside bounced out. It fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. "My jade!" Fan Liqin's eyes were about to pop out. He hurriedly rushed up, but his target wasn't Tan Shi. Instead, he looked at the red box in the distance. His face was ashen as he picked up the shattered jade. He was fuming with anger as he strode towards Tan Shi. "You idiot!" Just as his voice fell, Fan Liqin's wrist suddenly went numb. The few pieces of jade in his hand fell to the ground again. This time, they were shattered beyond repair. Although Tan Shi had previously shattered the jade, fortunately, one of the pieces of jade could be used to make a small ring to recover some of the losses. However, this second time, it was shattered beyond repair. He didn't know if he had been possessed, but he felt that the degree of shattering was a little too much. This jade pendant wasn't very big to begin with. Now that it had been smashed, it was even more worthless. Fan Liqin was completely stunned. He clutched his wrist and stared at the broken jade on the ground in disbelief, gnashing his teeth. At this moment, Jing Yunzhao suddenly smiled. His voice was like a cold bell, and it was as clear as a cool breeze. His eyes were dark and cold as he said, "Boss Fan, this jade has a mind of its own. It will choose its owner. Although you've spent a lot of money on it, it might be because your character doesn't match up to it. Even it knows to despise you." Pak Yuan's brows immediately relaxed and he couldn't help but laugh secretly. Although Fan Liqin and Tan Shi's fall was somewhat coincidental, he didn't know why, but he always felt that Jing Yunzhao was like a lucky star. Everything would tilt towards her trajectory. Boss Fan has so much money. He shouldn't care about such an insignificant piece of jade. Pak Yuan didn't forget to deliberately provoke him. Fan Liqin's old face twitched. The muscles on his face were somewhat ferocious. His triangular eyes emitted a cold light. He wished he could viciously strangle Tan Shi, who was still on the ground, to death. 50 million. It wasn't just a matter of 19 million now. If the jade was intact, he would have a reason to return it. But now, it had actually shattered. And it had been shattered by the woman beside him in front of so many people. What else could he say? Without the jade, his previous hints to the manager were all in vain. It was impossible to get back the 50 million. He was a businessman. If he was the owner of this jewelry company, he definitely wouldn't do such a stupid thing. He had originally planned to use this opportunity to promote this jewelry company and his own company. Then, he would discuss the refund behind his back. Now that things had turned out like this, how could he return it? Chapter 957. Fan Liqin was so angry that he was trembling. He stared at the broken jade for a while. After a few seconds, he suddenly walked over to Tan Shi and slapped her hard. Did you do that on purpose? You still can't forget this man. The floor was very flat, and her legs didn't cramp. How did she suddenly fall? He had known her for so many years, and this woman had never had any accidents in front of him. But now, she had fallen and broken the jade. If she hadn't deliberately made things difficult for him for Pak Yuan, he definitely wouldn't believe it. No. Brother Fan, I didn't do it on purpose. I don't know why, but my calf. Tan Shi hurriedly explained, but before she could finish, Fan Liqin slapped her again. Do you think I'm an idiot? After the 2 slaps, Tan Shi was completely stunned. When she was with Pak Yuan in the past, it was all tenderness and sweetness. The husband and wife had always had a good relationship. Pak Yuan was a very reasonable man. Even if there was a dispute between them, he would never hit a woman. Even when he found out about her betrayal, Pak Yuan only looked at her in despair. He didn't even touch her. Moreover, Fan Liqin used many methods to pursue her. He was especially gentlemanly, and he never hit her. In the past 2 years, she didn't have many opportunities to see Fan Liqin. But she never thought that now, Fan Liqin would actually yell at her in front of Pak Yuan over a piece of jade. He even. Brother Fan, I really didn't. Tan Shi's heart was filled with regret. Just now, she really didn't know what happened. Because she was holding the jade in her hand, she was especially careful. But when she reached the door, she felt a sharp pain in her calf, as if it was about to break. That was why she suddenly fell. She fell so miserably that her knee was bleeding. If her man was still Pak Yuan, he definitely wouldn't feel sorry for the jade. He would definitely pay attention to her body. Tan Shi's eyes were filled with tears. She was extremely aggrieved. At this moment, she looked pitiful. The resentment on her face was even heavier. She didn't have the weeping beauty of a weeping woman. Instead, she gave off the feeling of a resentful housewife. When Pak Yuan saw his ex-wife like this, he thought that he would be heartbroken, but he was surprisingly calm. Things had changed with the passage of time. He had been away from the capital for 3 years. Although he still felt resentment and unwillingness, his reluctance to part with this woman had indeed disappeared. When he was young, he poured almost all of his feelings into this woman, but everything this woman did was to erase all of the beautiful memories in his heart. He had eyes. When Tan Shi and Fan Liqin came in, they looked at him with disgust and fear, as if they were afraid that he would spoil the good thing. Since that was the case, why did he have to bitterly hold on by himself and remember the fake past? Pak Yuan, did you ask her to do this? This piece of jade is worth a lot, so you'll compensate for it on her behalf. 50 million. Not a single cent less. Fan Liqin vented his anger on Tan Shi and immediately pointed at Pak Yuan. Originally, this man had some of the aura of a big boss, but at this moment, he was provoked by this piece of jade. He was like a mad dog, biting anyone he saw. Boss Fan, do you think I'm a sucker? You were the one who bid for this item, and you were the one who brought her here. Why should I compensate you? Pak Yuan immediately replied. While he was gloating, he didn't hide the trace of disgust in his eyes. She's your wife. If it weren't for you, would she have broken the jade? Fan Liqin said angrily. He already knew that this woman was an ingrate, but he didn't think that she would be blind to this extent. She actually thought of ways to help Pak Yuen. She really dared. Chapter 958. When Fan Li-chin said the word wife, the people around him had different expressions. Boss Fan had just walked in with that woman so openly and even acted so intimately. Why didn't he say that the woman was someone else's wife? Now that the woman had caused trouble, he pushed the blame onto someone else. Anyone with eyes could tell who was right and who was wrong. When Tan-shi heard Fan Li-chin's words, her face turned pale. He had said that she was Pak Yuen's wife so confidently. That meant that he had mixed her up with Pak Yuen. That meant that he didn't want her anymore. She had sacrificed so many years and even betrayed Pak Yuen's deep feelings for him. Now, this was the outcome she had gotten in return. Although her twin sons were the young masters of the Fan family, Fan Li-chin had a wife and a daughter. She didn't know how his wife treated her sons. She hadn't succeeded in thinking of a way to make Fan Li-chin divorce her and remarry, but she was about to be abandoned by Fan Li-chin. How could she accept this? Brother Fan, I really didn't do it on purpose. My leg hurt a lot just now, so I dropped something. Pak Yuen, tell Brother Fan. We haven't seen each other for 3 years. How could I help you? Tan-shi said hurriedly. She looked extremely embarrassed. When Pak Yuen heard this, he laughed sarcastically. Look at what she said. Did she think that he, Pak Yuen, was a stupid pig? How could she help him? That's right. Back then, she had blamed her infatuation on the dog. No, even if the dog had loyalty, she didn't. When he left the capital, on one hand, Fan Li-chin had deliberately suppressed him. On the other hand, he still cared about their old relationship. He knew that he came from an ordinary background. Although his grades were outstanding when he was in university, many girls who knew about his family background kept their distance. They didn't want to get close to him at all. It was as if they were afraid that he would pester them with bad intentions. Only Tan-shi was different. At that time, they lived a simple but romantic life every day. She disregarded her parents' disdain and married him. It was already a grievance, so after marriage, he gave in to her in every way. He could not bear to let her do the housework, and she did not need to earn the money. He had worked hard to buy a house. Although it was alone, the area was not small, and his life was thriving. Moreover, with his ability, it could be better in the future. However, Fan Li-chin got to know Tan-shi at the company's family banquet. It was just that at that time, he trusted Tan-shi very much. He never thought that she would do something wrong to him, and even overlooked a lot of suspicious points. Afterwards, even if his wife and son were no longer his, the only person he hated was Fan Li-chin. He had never hardened his heart towards this woman. He respected her choice and simply backed out without any further entanglement. However, the choice he had made in the past was not important to Tan-shi at all. She did not even care about it. When they met again, swords were drawn and bows were bent. Since that was the case, if he still did not repent and thought that the past was precious, then he was a complete fool. Tan-shi's words made Pak Yuen's expression more resolute. That's right. We haven't seen each other for 3 years. Even if you want to help, you won't help me. Pak Yuen snorted coldly and reached out to stuff his card into his wallet. Then, he continued, Boss Fan, don't throw dirty water on an innocent person. She used to be my wife, but she's just a woman who cheated. I, Pak Yuen, don't cherish her so much. We've been divorced for 3 years. If you want to stuff her into my arms again, you have to see if I find it dirty or not. As soon as he finished speaking, many people looked at Tan-shi with eyes full of disdain. Chapter 959. This Pak Yuen wasn't bad looking either. He was a man of striking appearance. Compared to Boss Fan, he was naturally younger and more handsome. He spoke modestly and courteously, and his attitude wasn't as aggressive as Boss Fan's. He was definitely a good man. And this woman was able to go behind such a good man's back and find Boss Fan. If it wasn't for money, what else could it be? Thinking back to how happy she was when she was hugging the jade, he felt that it was extremely laughable. It was fine if she was a gold digger, but she was also a slut with no principles. Who would look up to her? Boss Fan, this woman was already yours. I don't want to bicker with you if you like to pick up leftovers. It's just a piece of jade, and you're making such a big fuss about it. You've really shown me that even the great Boss Fan isn't that generous. Pak Yuen touched the watch on his wrist again. He glanced at it and frowned. It's getting late. We don't have as much free time as Boss Fan. I'm afraid we'll have to go first. Pak Yuen, you actually don't even care about our past relationship? Tan Shi asked in disbelief. She understood Pak Yuen. He was someone who valued relationships. Even if she had let him down, he would still help her so that Fan Lichin wouldn't suspect her. But she didn't expect Pak Yuen to be so ruthless. He clearly knew that Boss Fan cared about his reputation, but he said that she was a leftover in front of everyone. This way, Boss Fan would definitely loathe her more and more. In the future, she would never be able to win Boss Fan's heart. Do we still have feelings for each other in the past? Pak Yuen sneered. Tan Shi, I treated you well in the past. Everything was given to you and your parents. How did you repay me? I'm not asking you to be a chaste woman, but at the very least, your heart should be loyal. But what about you? Fan Lichin gave you a few branded clothes, a few bags, and said some fake sweet nothings to you, and you took the initiative to wrap yourself around his waist. After having sex with him, you still had to put on an act in front of me and pretend to be a good wife. Thinking back, don't you feel ashamed? It wasn't that he couldn't afford branded clothes or bags, and it wasn't that he hadn't bought them before. Every month, other than the mortgage, he would also use a portion of his money to buy things for her. He never owed her anything. However, Fan Lichin was her boss, and he had an advantage in terms of money, which made her lose her mind. Tan Shi blushed at his words. I had no choice back then. Pak Yuen sneered. I don't want to hear you guys talk about love. Pak Yuen, if you don't compensate me for the jade today, I'll immediately call the police and have her arrested, Fan Lichin immediately said angrily. Then do as you wish. Pak Yuen chuckled. He didn't care. After he finished speaking, he made a please gesture in front of Jing Yunzhao. Jing Yunzhao glanced at Tan Shi and shook his head. Before he left, he glanced at the manager and took out the special VIP card Hua Tianxian had given him. I hope this payment can be made. Your eldest daughter should be paying attention to the progress. It would be strange if she suffered a loss at the Hua family's jewelry store. Of course, Hua Tianxian was one of their own after all. If there were benefits, she should be allowed to do it. When the manager saw the card, he immediately became much more serious. He looked at Jing Yunzhao with a fawning expression. There were many types of Hua's jewelry VIP cards. They were divided into ordinary members, premium members, and super VIPs. These super VIPs were all friends of the Hua family. There weren't many cards, only about 10 or so. He didn't expect this girl to have one. With this card, no matter what, this matter had to be handled carefully. Even if Boss Fan wanted to make peace and ask for money in private, no amount of benefits would be enough. Chapter 960. When the manager's attitude changed, Fan Lichin also realized that something was wrong. He stared at Jing Yunzhao with a dangerous gaze. You know someone from the whole corporation. Boss Fan, you want to push the blame onto the whole corporation again. I wanted to buy my own jade, but you insisted on interfering. You were the one who pestered me and insisted on competing with me. You were also the one who offered 50 million. Even this donation certificate was personally signed by you. What right do you have to blame others? However, Boss Fan is kind-hearted and has done such a good deed. I believe that many people will still be grateful to you. Jing Yunzhao chuckled. After he finished speaking, he lifted his foot and walked out. Pak Yuan immediately followed behind him. The moment he walked past him, Fan Liqin vaguely noticed that something purple had slipped out from Jing Yunzhao's wrist. Upon closer inspection, it was an extremely exquisite violet jade bracelet. The manager's eyes were also sharp and he had some understanding of this industry. He immediately muttered softly, "Isn't this our whole corporation's exclusive product? The price is also 10 to 20 million. There's only one pair." At that time, it seems that a big shot bought it. The item was sold from the main store. How could a branch manager like him know clearly? However, this sentence made Fan Liqin and Tan Shi's eyes widen. Especially Tan Shi. She couldn't believe that Pak Yuan had actually bought such an expensive item for the woman beside him. 10 to 20 million. She had never even seen it before. Fan Liqin was so angry that he flipped out and tore the receipt in his hand to shreds. However, after tearing it, he regretted it. My jade broke before it even left your store. If your floor wasn't so slippery, I wouldn't have lost so much. Look, when the manager heard this, he immediately took a step back. Boss Fan, we have to ask our superiors about such a big matter. How can a small manager like me make the decision? The manager hurriedly laughed dryly. That little girl had already taken out the card. Of course, he had to discuss it with the young miss. If he offended someone he shouldn't offend, he would lose his job. Fan Liqin's face turned ugly. He pointed at the manager and said angrily, "Good. The whole family sure has guts." The manager was embarrassed, but there was nothing he could do. This matter couldn't be blamed on an outsider like him. Speaking of which, it was Boss Fan who insisted on competing with others. He won, but his joy turned to sorrow. Who was to blame? Fan Liqin glared fiercely at the manager and walked out angrily. Before he left, he gritted his teeth and looked at Tan Shi. What are you still standing there for? Go and find out what Pak Yuan is doing. To be able to gift such an expensive bracelet to a little girl, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Tan Shi shuddered. Not only was she frightened by Fan Liqin, but she was also curious. She quickly ran out and saw her husband, who had always put her first, opening the car door for another woman. A trace of jealousy rose in her heart. This man should have been hers. Besides, if Fan Liqin hadn't seduced her, they would still be fine. She liked Pak Yuan. She could only blame Pak Yuan for not having the ability back then. Yuan. Where are you going? Tan Shi braced herself and grabbed the man who was about to open the driver's door. Pak Yuan pulled his arm out and glanced at Jing Yunzhao in the back seat. He frowned slightly and said, "If you don't have anything to do, don't block my way." Yuan, why are you so cruel? I know I did wrong, but I haven't had a good time in the past 3 years after I divorced you. After what just happened, Fan Liqin would never forgive me. Are you happy to see me suffer so much? I know you love me very much. You also love me very much, don't you? Chapter 961. Tan Shi looked anxious. She was afraid that Pak Yuan would really push her away and leave. Although she was looking for the man in front of her because of Fan Liqin, the moment she touched him, she couldn't help but feel nervous and excited. In the past, they were still very loving. She just couldn't resist the temptation. Later, she wanted to stop at the brink of the cliff, but Boss Fan wasn't the kind of man who could break up so easily. Moreover, she knew in her heart that if Pak Yuen found out about it, he would still divorce her. Instead of ending up in a bad situation, she could only stick close to Boss Fan. But now, she really regretted it. If she had held back, she would still be Mrs. Bai. She wouldn't have to live so hard alone. Also, the bracelet on this little girl's body would be hers. She believed that Pak Yuen wasn't the kind of man who would change his mind. He would definitely continue to treat her well. Unfortunately, She bit her lip and looked at Pak Yuen with regret and a trace of infatuation. Jing Yunzhao sat in the back seat. He only looked up at her and didn't say much. I loved you in the past, but now, we have nothing to do with each other. If there's nothing else, please move aside. Pak Yuen said as he opened the door and got in. But just as he was about to close the door, Shi squeezed her way in. Her hands clawed fiercely. If Pak Yuen used any force, he would definitely clamp her hands. Moreover, they were outside. It wouldn't look good if things got out of hand. What are you trying to do? Pak Yuen said angrily. Yuen, don't treat me like this. Can't we be friends? You used to. Shi said carefully. She knew that it was embarrassing and shameful, but she just couldn't control herself. Don't talk to me about the past. You don't have the right. Pak Yuen's eyes were filled with disgust. The past? In the past, Shi was not so shameless. At that time, she would blush when he said something harsh to her. But ever since she dared to have an affair, everything changed. She was the one who abandoned that family, and now she was talking about their old relationship. What did he take Pak Yuen for? A servant who could come and go as he wished. Shi's face turned pale. Shuwen, I know I did something wrong. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to. I still have your things in my house. After you left the capital, one of your friends couldn't find you and asked me to pass them to you. Give me your number and address. I'll send them to you when I'm free. Shi suddenly remembered and took the opportunity to find an excuse. Actually, these things weren't very important. They were just some photos that were printed out after a gathering with friends. No need. It's up to you whether you want to keep it or not. If you don't want to keep it, then throw it away. Pak Yuen frowned and showed no mercy. No, your friend said that it's very important. I must give it to you. Shuwen, and didn't my parents treat you badly when you divorced? In the past 3 years, they've been feeling terrible and their health is not good. They always want to see you again and apologize to you. So, you gave me your address and number. Shi quickly seized the opportunity. Pak Yuen rubbed his eyebrows. He was very annoyed. People in business might not be as difficult to deal with as his ex-wife and ex-girlfriend. Because they were close in the past, he couldn't be direct about many things. If he made things too ugly, he wouldn't look like a man. But if he really relented, he would feel aggrieved. And if he didn't give her an answer now, he was afraid that she would continue to pester him. I don't have a house in the capital now. I'll give you my number. Pak Yuen said coldly. Shi was stunned. He didn't have a house. Okay. Then tell me, I'll try calling. Although she was a little confused, she still chose a smart way. Chapter 962. Pak Yuen shook his head. He was speechless as he looked at Shi. Originally, he wanted to give her a random number to send her off, but he didn't expect her to have such an ulterior motive. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed like she was helping Fan Liqin and letting Boss Fan know about his current situation. It wasn't that he couldn't give her this number. He usually had 2 numbers. One was used to contact Jing Yunzhao and other important people, while the other was reserved for outsiders. At this moment, he directly gave her the number. Tanshi dialed it once and only stopped when she heard Pak Yuan's phone ring. Tanshi let go and Pak Yuan immediately closed the car door, leaving behind a cloud of dust as he left. Watching the back of the car leave, Tanshi's heart bled. Her expression was ugly and she staggered as she walked, but she still obediently walked over to Fan Liqin and gave him the number. Fan Liqin had lost so much money for no reason, so he was furious when he saw Tanshi. Compared to when he first arrived, he was much more heartless now. He didn't even care about her existence as he ordered the driver to drive away. Tanshi was wearing a beautiful and simple outfit. Although she had a bag with her, she didn't have any money with her since she was with Fan Liqin. She stood in front of Hua's jewelry with a confused and anxious look on her face. She didn't even have the money to take a taxi home, so she could only walk forward pitifully in her high heels. Big brother bye, I'm afraid this ex-wife of yours won't stop in the future. Jing Yunzhao suddenly said in the car. Pak Yuan frowned slightly. Just now, it was Boss Fan's idea. I don't think she's that thick-skinned. After all, in front of Boss Fan, she can't wait to keep her distance from me. Like you said, that's in front of Boss Fan. Jing Yunzhao chuckled. His eyes were bottomless. Just now, she was staring at my bracelet. She's so jealous that she's about to go crazy. If she can't get anything out of Fan Liqin and finds out about your current status, she'll definitely want to rekindle her old flame with you. Pak Yuan heard this and didn't quite believe it. Of course, it wasn't that he thought Tanshi had good character. He just thought that Tanshi and he had been in a bad relationship for a long time. Tanshi herself should know that he wouldn't change. Since what she loves right now is money, then of course she'd do anything for money. Brother bye, compared to this kind of woman, Xiang Jin is a million times better. You have to deal with this properly and don't let her down. Otherwise, I won't even help you when the time comes, Jing Yunzhao said as she touched the violet jade bracelet that her uncle gave her. Pak Yuan nodded. When he thought of Xiang Jin, his heart warmed. He had never thought of developing a relationship with Xiang Jin, but after working together for Jing Yunzhao for so many years, they would see each other frequently. Xiang Jin, on the other hand, was a very different woman. She was meticulous, capable, and experienced in handling matters. There were many times when he didn't need to say anything and she would be able to handle things in an orderly manner. In addition to their past experiences, it made him feel that the two of them were in the same boat. Therefore, it was inevitable that new feelings would arise. They were both single and had no children. They weren't old either. It would be strange if he wasn't moved. At this time, Jing Yunzhao accompanied Pak Yuan to look at the house. He decided to let her help him decide. It had to be said that once he had real estate, Pak Yuan felt a sense of belonging. He felt more at ease. He was going to open a branch in capital city and shift his focus. In the future, he and Xiang Jin would come over to help her. Serene City's scale had stabilized and the people under him had been brought out. They could take over his original position. From now on, capital city would be his main battlefield. Chapter 963. At night, while everyone was returning home, in a villa in the capital and another small house, a man and woman were staring at the things in front of them with complicated emotions. As soon as she left the jewelry company, Fan Liqin immediately began to contact the people of the Hua family to deal with the donation. She hoped that the other party would just put on a show, but she didn't expect that they would reject her without giving her any face. He was furious, and only then did he start to investigate the Pak Yuan. This investigation made his heart feel extremely stifled. He originally thought that he would need some time to find out everything about the Pak Yuan, but who would have thought that in just a few hours, he would know everything clearly. It was only because the Pak Yuan was in the limelight that he contacted Ning City to inquire about it. He wanted to know as much as he wanted about the Pak Yuan. According to the information, this Pak Yuan suddenly established the Jade Spirit Wine Company 3 years ago. With the help of those delicious wines, whether it was the media in Ning City or anywhere else, they were all praising him endlessly. In just 3 years, he had actually reshuffled the cards and achieved success once again. Of course, Fan Liqin was curious about where Pak Yuan's money came from. After all, the Jade Spirit Wine Company's funds were not low, but no matter how he investigated, he was still confused. Even the internet only said that there was an expert behind him, as for who it was, no one knew. In short, the current Pak Yuan was no longer the down-and-out family that he had chased out of the capital back then. No wonder he dared to challenge him. That Jade Spirit Wine Company's wealth was not lower than his company's. Moreover, he knew about the Jade Spirit Wine Company. The wine produced by this company was very famous, whether it was during the New Year or during normal banquets, one could often see the shadow of this wine. It had to be said that the taste was extremely good, and he especially liked it. But now, when he thought about how this wine was made by Pak Yuan, he felt like vomiting out his entire stomach. Fan Liqin was so angry that he was trembling, and his subordinate beside him said, "The people in Ning City said that Pak Yuan came to the capital this time to prepare for the branch company, and in the future, I'm afraid that the Jade Spirit Wine Company will focus on the development of the capital." Oh right, they also said that Pak Yuan will bring the wine to the official wine exhibition this time. The 7 Stars wine of the Jade Spirit Wine Company had long been listed as one of the top 10 wines in the Yang province. If it won an award in the country this time, the limelight would be even greater. If it was in the past, the Jade Spirit Wine Company would have nothing to do with him. But now, seeing Bai Yuan earn money with his own eyes, he felt uncomfortable. However, he didn't know much about Pak Yuan, and the Jade Spirit Wine Company had developed so much, so it was a bit difficult to deal with. While Fan Liqin was in a dilemma, Tanshi was even more emotional. The moment she got home, she immediately went online to search for Pak Yuan. Originally, she wasn't confident that she could find anything, but who knew that his photo would appear on the page? When she looked at the introduction, she was even more shocked. Pak Yuan, a well-known entrepreneur in the Yang province. He ran a wine company with an annual profit of over 10 billion. After that, there was some news about the Jade Spirit Wine Company. There were also some rumors, such as some people saying that Pak Yuan had someone backing him, and some saying that he and the company's vice president, Xiang Jin, were a match made in heaven. How is this possible? Tanshi's expression changed when she saw this, and then she smiled bitterly. Yuan is actually so powerful. If she had known that he would have such a day, even if Fan Liqin brought out a mountain of gold, she wouldn't have been moved. When Pak Yuan and Fan Liqin were at the same level, of course Pak Yuan was more outstanding. Chapter 964. At this time, Tenshi stared at the figure on the screen for a long time, unable to move his eyes away. The man in the photo was mature and steady, and it was impossible to tell that he was middle-aged at all. His whole person seemed to be shining, just like a rich bachelor. She was in a daze. In the end, she was awakened by the soreness in her legs. From Hua's jewelry to her small house, she had walked for a few hours. Her feet were already covered in blisters. Looking at her temporary residence, Tenshi felt even more regretful. She had bought this house after she divorced Pak Yuan. At the time, Fan Liqin had wanted to embarrass Pak Yuan, so he had specially bought a house for her to live in. However, it was a single apartment and was very small. Usually, her parents couldn't even stay here if they wanted to. Now that she thought about it, although she had to pay the mortgage with Pak Yuen at the time, the house was spacious and bright. It wasn't like this place, which was like a sparrow's nest. She unlocked her phone and looked at the number on it. After thinking for a while, she dialed it. The middle of the night was naturally a good time to talk to each other. Unfortunately, Pak Yuen looked at the number and immediately hung up and blacklisted it. Behind the busy tone, she looked at the person on the screen with tears in her eyes. When the holiday started, Jing Yunzhao entered a busy state. Every night, he would enter the space punctually to learn things and practice martial arts. During the day, he would accompany his family or go to Xiao Haiqing's set to visit. Because she often brought food to the set, she gradually became more familiar with the director. Xiao Haiqing was very popular on the set and was very popular. After Lin tried to find ways to promote her, she now had a fan base. Naturally, she attracted more and more attention because of her good looks. 2 days after she parted ways with Pak Yuen brought Yuling wines to a competition and won a gold medal. He also gained the reputation of being a national famous wine and became famous again. During the interview, Pak Yuen suddenly announced a big piece of news that shocked everyone. That was the real boss of Jade's Spirit Wines. Pak Yuen didn't mention Jing Yunzhao. Instead, he made it clear that he was only the temporary CEO of the company. In fact, the real decision-maker of Yuling Wines had always been scheming behind the scenes. All the important decisions were made by this big boss. Even the funding problem that had puzzled everyone for years was finally solved. As soon as he said this, many people raised their heads in anticipation, waiting for Pak Yuen to reveal the name of the big boss. However, Pak Yuen kept his mouth shut at the last moment, looking as if he wanted to keep it a secret. This made many people want to vomit blood. And this set off a storm in the industry. Many people began to investigate. However, they couldn't find any clues. Those who knew Jing Yunzhao in Ning City knew that it was her. They knew her ability and could guess that it was her, but after all, there were very few of them. Even if others knew Jing Yunzhao's name, they probably wouldn't believe it. Yuling Wines had been established for 3 years. If Jing Yunzhao was the boss, then she was only 15 years old when she took action. Which 15-year-old girl had such ability? Pak Yuen had been calling non-stop for the past few days, but he wasn't angry at all. Instead, he was very happy. After all, this matter had been bottled up in his heart for a long time. In the past, in order to protect Jing Yunzhao, he couldn't tell anyone about this news. He could only experience the majesty and perversion of the big boss alone. That kind of feeling was simply torturous. Now, after a period of time, more people would experience the pain and happiness he had felt all these years. He was really looking forward to it. Especially now that more and more people were curious, he was in no hurry to announce it. Chapter 965. There were endless rumors about Yuling wine. Some people were curious, but some people thought that it was Pak Yuen's way of hyping up Yuling wine. They didn't take it seriously at all. But no matter what, this matter still caused an uproar. At this time, Pak Yuen took advantage of the fact that the 7-star wine had won the first prize and held a housewarming banquet at home. The house he bought was already fully renovated. He just had to bring his bag and move in. After a few days of simple furniture, he obviously wouldn't stay in a hotel. Other than Pak Yuen, Xiang Jin had also come to the capital. She also brought Jing Fan, who she hadn't seen in a long time. This housewarming banquet was actually just a simple meal at home. There were only the 4 of them. As the big boss, Jing Yunzhao didn't have to cook. Xiang Jin and Jing Fan took the initiative to cook. The table of sumptuous dishes made people drool. After not seeing each other for a long time, Jing Fan's appearance and temperament had changed a lot. In the past, she was very submissive. Just like her name, she was extremely delicate. But now, she was full of vitality. She had a smile on her face and was full of energy. She was even more beautiful. "Sis, I heard from Brother Bai that you found your family. Is that true?" But when it came to family, Jing Fan was a bit more careful. Jing Fan was wearing a red down jacket, which made her face look red. She was really gorgeous. Her long hair was tied up, revealing her bright forehead. Her eyes were full of spirit and the corners of her mouth were raised. She was full of vitality. "And I found them." Jing Yunzhao nodded. "Then, what kind of person is she? Don't you live in our county? Why is her family in the capital?" Jing Fan asked again. "Because of some accidents. Later, I'll let Sister Jean tell you in detail." Jing Yunzhao tried to look as friendly as possible. She also knew that she always had an unapproachable temperament. She didn't care about other people, but Jing Fan was a pitiful person like her. His mind was probably sharper and more meticulous than the average person. Jing Fan smiled and grabbed Jing Yunzhao's arm. After a while, she said, "Sis, can you take me to see your family?" Jing Yunzhao was stunned. After thinking for a while, he shook his head and said, "Not at the moment. You should study hard. You will have the chance to meet him in the future." After all, Jing Fan's parents had schemed against her back then and almost caused her to lose her reputation. And in the past few days, her second uncle had been treating her better and better, but he also felt more and more guilty. It was obvious that he had some understanding of what had happened in the past. Seeing Jing Fan now, even if he gave her face and treated her politely on the surface, it might not be so in private. She had just been reunited with her family, so it was still a sensitive period. Things would be much better in a year or two. A trace of disappointment flashed across Jing Fan's face, but it quickly disappeared. Big Sister Yunzhao definitely still cared about what her parents had done back then. It was all her family's fault. If they hadn't lied to her. No, if that was the case, she wouldn't have known Big Sister Yunzhao. Jing Yunzhao looked at Jing Fan's expression and frowned slightly. "Previously, I heard from Big Brother Bai that you would be taking the college entrance exam in half a year. Now that I think about it, it doesn't seem right. It seems to be a year early." Jing Yunzhao suddenly remembered. The children in the counties around Ning City usually went to school earlier. For example, she wasn't even an adult when she graduated from high school. Jing Fan was younger than her by 2 years and was only 16. His age didn't seem right. Chapter 966. Previously, Jing Yunzhao didn't think too much about it. Now that he saw this young face, he remembered. Jing Fan's basic necessities, food, housing, transportation, and tuition were all provided by her. Of course, she had to be responsible for asking. Xiao Fan skipped a grade and finished all the second-year courses in her first year. Xiang Jin came out of the kitchen with a plate and said, "Other than you, President Jing, I've never seen a child who is more studious than her. Every night, she studies until the second half of the night. Her house is filled with test questions. She insists that she can't let your help down. Although she skipped a grade, her grades are still among the best compared to the older children. She said that she must go to a university in the future." When Jing Yunzhao heard this, he was a little surprised. Her grades were very good before, but she didn't think of skipping a grade. After all, she was already incompatible with the environment. If she joined another senior group, she would definitely be lonely. Moreover, Xiao Haiqing and the others were in the class. What was the point of her walking alone? Do you have any close friends? Jing Yunzhao asked. She looked like an adult. Xiang Jin and Pak Yuan even forgot that she was also a little girl. This was also the reason why they insisted that Jing Yunzhao call them a brother and sister instead of uncle and auntie. After all, she was too mature and the latter would make them look old. They are not willing to play with me. Jing Fan lowered her head. When she first transferred over, although she had changed her hairstyle, it didn't take long for people to recognize her as the infamous Jing family member on the internet. Although that trend had already passed, the friends that she finally got along with still distanced themselves from her. At that time, she was afraid that Jing Yunzhao would regret taking back everything from her one day, so she studied hard, thinking that it would be better if she skipped a grade. Jing Yunzhao was silent for a long time. Jing Fan, there aren't many times you can start over. You have to grasp it well. Grades are important, but there's no need to work so hard. The most important thing is that people have their own social circle. Even a friend is good, Jing Yunzhao said in an instant. She used to work hard, but she also tried to find opportunities to get along with friends. Of course, she had the advantage of having an interspace, but Jing Fan didn't. Good grades were a good thing, but she didn't even have a friend and only thought about skipping a grade. It seemed a little too much. Her anxious feeling was as if she was constantly looking for opportunities to start over again and find a new social circle. Once she was dissatisfied with her new life, she would continue to escape and find another one. Yes, I know I was wrong. Jing Fan nodded quickly. Jing. She thought that Jing Fan. She thought, her, but, her appearance, she was just a confident and beautiful. She didn't want to see it. And she was. And him. As soon as the praise came out, a real smile appeared on Jing Fan's face. He quickly prepared the bowls and chopsticks. The four of them sat down and started eating. Not long after, the doorbell rang. Pak Yuan was puzzled. He had just moved here. Could it be the property management? He got up and opened the door. His face darkened. He saw a well-dressed woman standing outside the door. Behind the woman was a group of people in their 50s or 60s. They were holding fruits in their hands and smiling. They looked very sincere. Chapter 967. It was Tan Shi and her parents. Why are you here? Pak Yuan's face immediately turned cold. With Tan Shi's ability, it was impossible for her to know where he lived. He was afraid that Fan Liqin had found out and told her. Tan Shi's face flashed with embarrassment, but before she could say anything, the old woman behind her squeezed into the room and said with a smile, Yuan, why didn't you tell me you came to the capital? I heard that you just bought a new house and lived in a hotel before, right? Really, how expensive is a hotel? If we knew you were coming, your father and I would treat you well. Even if we had to sleep on the floor, we would let you live comfortably. After the old woman finished speaking, she put the fruit on the floor and pulled Tan Shi into the house. With the two women leading the way, Pak Yuan couldn't do anything. When Tan Shi entered the door, she rubbed her body against him, making him retreat. As soon as this woman came in, Father Tan also walked in happily. Oh, there are guests. Mother Tan glanced at the dining room and made a fuss, but she didn't go in. Bai Yuan did not have the slightest bit of nostalgia for Tan Shi, but he was not a scoundrel. It could even be said that he was a gentleman who had received a good upbringing. Although his heart was as clear as a mirror, he was most afraid of encountering such a scoundrel and unreasonable person, making him not know what to do. Hit. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this family of 3 was old and weak, women and children. How could he hit them? Scolding them was also very difficult. He had learned how to communicate with people his whole life, but he hadn't learned how to make enemies. Therefore, he was so angry that his face turned green, but he couldn't say a word. Tan-shi. Take them out. Otherwise, I will immediately call the security guards to come and get them. Pak Yuen said coldly. Tan-shi looked at the cold man in front of her and her tears fell instantly. Shuan, my parents were very concerned when they heard that you came to the capital. That's why they came to see you without an invitation. They really mean well. We won't stay for long. We'll leave in a while. She looked at Pak Yuen with a gentle gaze, just like when they first met. The man in front of her was tall and handsome. Although time had left a little trace on his face, it had deepened his elite temperament. This man was once her husband. Pak Yuen became more and more speechless towards Tan-shi. Originally, he did not believe that Tan-shi would pester him. After all, in his memory, people were not so shameless. However, he did not expect that, as Jing Yunzhao said, she actually took the initiative to come to him. Not only that, she even brought her parents and used the elders as an excuse. He used to be respectful and courteous to his parents-in-law. Every year, he would give them a lot of money to take care of them. Almost all the appliances and furniture in the house were bought by him. Shuan, don't blame she. She's just worried about you. Tell me, can a man like you live well at home? That's why we came to take a look. Look, these fruits were personally picked by her. She put in a lot of effort. Mother Tan helped her daughter. Pak Yuen sneered. Since you're here and have seen, get out of my house immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Pak Yuen still insisted. Father Tan's expression turned ugly. He sat on the sofa and stared at Pak Yuen. He said, Shuan, no matter what, you've called us father and mother for a few years. Even if she did you wrong, we didn't, right? In the past, when you came to our house, your mother and I always prepared a table of delicious food to entertain you. Now that we're here, you don't even serve us a cup of hot tea. You even ask us to leave. Is this how you treat your guests? Chapter 968. Father Tan's voice was like the ringing of a bell, full of energy. Every word he said was methodical, as if every word was reasonable. In the dining room behind the cupboard, Xiang Jin and the others looked at each other, not understanding the situation. Seeing Jing Yunzhao's unsurprised expression, they were even more puzzled and asked softly, Chief Jing, are the people here President Bai's ex-wife and parents-in-law? She felt that with Pak Yuen's temper, even if he was blind back then, he wouldn't have married such a thick-skinned woman, right? Xiang Jin's expression of disdain towards Pak Yuen's gaze made Jing Yunzhao laugh uncontrollably. Brother Bai is skillful in the business world, but there's absolutely no way to deal with this kind of scoundrel. Sister Jean, don't you want to help appropriately? If that Tan-shi sees you, she'll definitely give up. Jing Yunzhao deliberately teased softly. Hearing this, Xiang Jin's face turned red. Chief Jing, I think it's better to forget about it. His parents-in-law are obviously unreasonable. Why should I join in the fun? If I get implicated, then I'll be too innocent. Xiang Jin smiled. Although she said that, after a while, she couldn't help but look through the gap in the wine cupboard to the living room. Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips and snickered. He felt more and more that the two of them had a chance. Previously, she had misjudged the relationship between Hua Tianxian and Qi Zhong, but Pak Yuen and Xiang Jin should be right. After all, the two of them had married before. They were more careful with their other halves and knew how to protect a family. They were the so-called match made in heaven. At this time, Father Tan was sitting upright outside, as if waiting for Pak Yuan to take the initiative to admit his mistake. Pak Yuan suddenly felt like playing the lute to a cow. Mentioning the past again, as the wrong party, they actually kept mentioning the past in front of him, as if he was the one who did the wrong thing at that time. Uncle Tan, when we got divorced, you barged into my house and took Tanshi away. You even said that I let her down. You said that your family's Tanshi was destined to be a rich man's wife and that I ruined her future, right? Pak Yuan took a deep breath and continued to look at the three of them coldly. I let her go and be the wife of a rich man. Why are you lowering your faces to see a nobody like me? When Father Tan heard this, his face turned red. At that time, he didn't expect Pak Yuan to be able to run his own company and become the general manager of such a big company. Although he had seen news about him recently that he was only carrying out the duties of a general manager on behalf of someone else, since the other party had directly handed over such a big company to him, he must have received a lot of benefits, right? After being a general manager for so many years, he must have some savings on him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to buy this expensive house in such a good location. Moreover, Tanshi was no longer the same age as before, and she wasn't as beautiful as before. Fan Liqin had fooled her all these years, but in the end, he wasn't willing to give her any benefits. Based on his daughter's current appearance, it was basically impossible for her to find another man whose family background was passable to get married. However, if her family background wasn't good, he would feel somewhat disappointed. After thinking about it, Pak Yuan was still better. Back then, he could be considered filial and doted on Tanshi a lot. More importantly, he was willing to part with his wife and his wife's family. He was willing to part with his time and money. Now that he was successful and famous, it was the best time to warm up with his wife and son. He definitely had to find one. Other women didn't understand him, and it would be troublesome for them to cultivate feelings for each other. Tanshi was different. As long as she was obedient, it wasn't impossible for the two of them to rekindle their old feelings. Pak Yuan should be able to understand that. Chapter 969. Although Tanshi had done something wrong, Papa Tan didn't think much of it. In this day and age, many girls would go through several men before they got married. They weren't old-fashioned and didn't need to care so much. Besides, his daughter had given her first love to Pak Yuan. Even if she had followed Fan Liqin halfway, she had only been with two people. It was better than those dirty women outside, right? As parents, they naturally treated their children very well. Shuan, our she-er, has been following you since she was in university. She didn't study properly because of you. Later on, she didn't even work because she wanted to take care of your family. As a result, she didn't have any work experience at all. Now, she can't even find a place to earn a living. You know better than me how competitive the capital city is. She did something wrong, but everyone makes mistakes, right? Your father and I have thought about it. You try to get along with she-er and you'll discover her good points. Don't worry, we won't let you suffer. We promise that after she marries into the family, she'll have 2 children and serve your in-laws without a second thought. As for she-er's twin sons, they belong to the Fan family and have nothing to do with you. Just treat them as if they don't exist. If she makes another mistake in the future, you can hit her or scold her. We'll just pretend we don't know anything. What do you think? Papa Tan persuaded earnestly. She wanted to dig her heart out for Pak Yuan to see clearly. Her words were half true and half false. The twins were the Fan family's children. Even Tanshi, as their mother, didn't usually see them, let alone their grandparents. Naturally, they had nothing to do with Pak Yuan. As for this display of loyalty, it was also sincere. Today, Fan Liqin had told Tan Shi Pak Yuan's address with the intention of letting the family come over to make a scene. However, after careful consideration, the couple felt that Fan Liqin's words weren't trustworthy. After all, he had lied to Tan Shi in the past. Therefore, the family decided to take a risk. They might as well cut ties with Fan Liqin and focus on following Pak Yuan in the future. After Tan Mu's mother finished speaking, Pak Yuan was fuming with anger. No! At this moment, a woman's voice suddenly sounded in the room. The three members of the Tan family immediately turned around and saw a woman walk out of the restaurant. The woman was very beautiful and was much younger than Tan Shi. She had a good figure and it was obvious that she had never given birth before. She was dressed in a clean and professional manner. After she spoke, she walked directly to Pak Yuan and held his arm. Who are you? Tan Shi's heart skipped a beat. She had a bad feeling about this. The woman in front of him was wearing slippers and looked very casual, as if she was at home. She originally thought that she would meet the little girl from before, but she didn't expect that it would be someone else. If it was the young girl from before, she had a good chance of winning because that kind of girl couldn't resist temptation. Pak Yuan could spend money on her, but it was impossible for him to marry that kind of girl. However, now that this girl suddenly appeared, she suddenly felt uncertain. After all, they looked so compatible with each other. Hello, I'm Xiang Jin, Lao Bai's girlfriend. The corner of Xiang Jin's mouth curled up. She looked generous and magnanimous, but her aura directly overpowered the other party. Xiang Jin used to be a rich young lady. Although she suffered after she got married, the pride in her bones was still there. In addition, she had been doing business in Jingyunzhou for the past 3 years and had met all kinds of people. Therefore, her aura more or less revealed the domineering aura of a strong woman. Girlfriend. Tan Shi's expression changed. The two members of the Tan family became even more nervous as they stared at Xiang Jin and Pak Yuan. Chapter 970. Xiang Jin and Pak Yuan were working partners and had a lot of contact. After a long time, they more or less had a tacit understanding. When Pak Yuan saw her appear, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. It was more appropriate for a woman to come forward to deal with a woman. Xiang Jin smiled slightly, but there was a threat in her eyes. I heard Old Bai mention you before. I didn't expect to be lucky enough to meet you today. Sister Tan is as special as I imagined. The muscles on Tan Shi's chin trembled. Sister Tan. Was she that old? He said something about me. Tan Shi secretly gritted her teeth and tried her best to regain her face. Yuan and I have been husband and wife for several years, and we are each other's first love. Don't you mind? She had seen this name on the internet before. It was said that Xiang Jin was the vice president of Yuling Wine, but in her opinion, she was no different from a secretary. She did not believe that such a woman could climb to that position with her own ability. Who knew how many dirty tricks she used behind her back? What's there to mind? Who hasn't met a few scumbags when they were young? How would they know that I'm good if they haven't seen a weirdo? Of course, Sister Tan, don't be angry. I'm not talking about you. It's just an example. Xiang Jin smiled and flipped her hair. Old Bai is good in all other aspects, especially his upbringing. There's nothing to say about it, so sometimes it's hard to express when he's unhappy. I've been with him day and night, whether it's work or life. I know him very well in this aspect, so if you have anything to say, you can say it to me. Old Bai and I have a good understanding of each other. I guarantee that the meaning is the same. In the cubicle, Jing Yunzhao could not help but exclaim when he heard this. It was indeed the scariest when a woman was protecting her calf. All kinds of provocative words were said in a roundabout way. Jing Fan, who was beside him, was also surprised. He could not believe that Xiang Jin had said those words. She was also a very capable and simple person in her daily life. She had never been so targeted. When Tan Shi heard this, her eyes turned red. Mother Tan saw that her daughter was at a disadvantage and was immediately unhappy. She said, "Sister, our Shi and Yuan have been husband and wife for many years, and they have a good understanding of each other. You don't know that their relationship in the past was as good as the same person. Yuan doted on our Shi and never allowed her to do any hard work. He didn't want his woman to embarrass herself in public, so when you say you are his girlfriend, I don't believe it. Old lady, you're old age, so your memory is not very good, right? If it's disgraceful for a woman to work in public, then what's the point of breaking into private houses with you? That's right, I heard from Lao Bai that your daughter had given birth to a pair of sons for someone else. Sigh, this kind of behavior should be drowned in a pond in ancient times, right? Maybe even drowning in a pond isn't enough. You might even be paraded through the streets on a wooden donkey. Don't you think so?" Xiang Jin smiled faintly. She spoke slowly, word by word, but every word was heartfelt. Mother Tan was so angry that she felt dizzy. Back then, her daughter had found someone else. Although her reputation was not very good, they told the public that her daughter and son-in-law had already divorced long ago. However, they were afraid that their parents would be worried, so they kept it a secret. Therefore, outsiders did not think that her daughter had done anything wrong. Moreover, Pak Yuan left not long after the divorce. Whether it was black or white, it was naturally up to them. "Miss Yang. You're so confident. But I have bad news to tell you. A few days ago, when Yuan and I were in the jewelry store, there was another woman standing beside him. She was younger, prettier, and more elegant than you. She was even wearing the bracelet that Yuan bought for her. She spent Yuan's money. You said that you are his girlfriend. Who is that woman? You're not thinking too much, are you?" Chapter 971. Tan Shi glared fiercely at Xiang Jin, trying to find a trace of distrust or absent-mindedness in her eyes. However, there was none. Not only that, but after hearing Tan Shi's words, Xiang Jin raised her eyebrows and poked Pak Yuan's waist with her slender fingers. She said coquettishly, if he could do that kind of thing, would see him in a different light. "It's true," Tan Shi said anxiously. However, as soon as she said that, she knew that she had already lost. She had lost to the woman in front of her. This young Jean was calm and composed, unlike her, who was already flustered and at a loss. In her impression, Pak Yuan was hers and could only be hers. Although she saw Pak Yuan with the girl before, the girl didn't seem very close to him and looked a little strange. Moreover, Fan Liqin was there at the time, so she didn't feel much. However, it was different now. She entered the door humbly and sincerely wanted to make up with him. However, at this time, a so-called real girlfriend appeared. "Are you talking about me?" Jing Yunzhao followed her out. "Sister Jean, I'm afraid that only a person with a dirty heart would think that a man and a woman walking together must have that kind of relationship, right?" Tan Shi instantly felt that she had lost all her friends, but she was still a little unwilling. Your bracelet was bought by him. If you weren't, how could you, which eye of yours saw Pak Yuan buy me a bracelet? At that time, he was just setting a trap for you. You believed him. Stupid. Jing Yunzhao looked at her as if he was looking at an idiot. He ruthlessly provoked her again. Thinking about it carefully, it was indeed so. Although this girl had the intention to buy the jade, in the end, it was bought by Fan Liqin. As for the violet in her hand, it was only said that it was from Hua's jewelry. Whether it was bought by Pak Yuen or not was not known. She came excitedly to reconcile with him, but she was humiliated. How could this be? Pak Yuen, you're too ruthless. Do you know what she has done for you? If she hadn't put in a good word for you back then, you wouldn't have just been chased out of the capital. Furthermore, her house had been taken back by Fan Lichin in order to find you. In the future, we won't even have a place to stay. You have to take responsibility for this matter. Since the soft approach didn't work, Father Tan began to prepare for the hard approach. Fan Lichin had indeed taken back Tan Shi's apartment. If she couldn't make Pak Yuen unhappy and get a hold of Pak Yuen's weakness, then the apartment would be completely gone. Of course, the main reason was the broken piece of jade. Fan Lichin was an extremely stingy man. He definitely wouldn't spend money to raise a woman who might betray him. Furthermore, Tan Shi had broken the jade in front of so many people and lost his face. Not to mention taking back the apartment, the Tan family probably wouldn't have a good life in the future. This is the first time I've seen someone forcefully give their daughter who had an affair to someone else. If you want to find someone to take responsibility for this, then you should look for Fan Lichin. The three of you, Boss Fan isn't to be trifled with, but do you think our CEO Bai is? Don't blame me for not reminding you. For Yuling Wines to be able to get to where it is today, whether it's legal or illegal, it definitely has to be bribed. If you're not afraid of accidents happening, you're welcome to come every day. Xiang Jin smiled lightly, but it was full of threat. When Father Tan heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He had forgotten about this. He only remembered that Pak Yuen was once his son-in-law who was respectful and reverent in front of him. However, he had forgotten that he was now the CEO of a company. If he really wanted to do something, whether it was manpower or material resources, he could completely do it. Chapter 972. Tan Shi's heart trembled. Yuen wouldn't do that. Yuen, do you really want to force me to my death? Ah, Jin's thoughts are my thoughts. Although I just came to the capital, as the saying goes, money makes the world go round. Not to mention a few million, even a few 100,000 would cause people to fight for business in the black market. Tan Shi, I'm sure you don't want to lose this face or lose an arm or a leg. You don't want to see your child die, right? Pak Yuen took advantage of the situation to threaten her. If Yuling Wines wanted to make a name for itself, it naturally had to get in touch with the underworld. However, in this day and age, the underworld was covered in clean sheepskin. As long as one had some money and ability, it was easy to secretly raise some people. Pak Yuen's expression was dangerous. Tan Shi's heart thumped and she took 2 steps back. After not seeing each other for 3 years, the man in front of her was no longer someone she could control. Suddenly, she felt weak all over. Whether it was love or courage, it seemed to have disappeared. It was completely broken. She thought that a man like Pak Yuen would still care about her even if he was divorced. She thought that based on their many years of relationship, as long as she obediently admitted her mistakes, he would be obedient and dote on her again. Her heart felt like it was about to suffocate. Tan Shi didn't even know how she managed to walk out of the room. She only remembered that her hand felt heavy. Xiang Jin was smiling as he stuffed the things she had brought back into her hand. We won't leave any dirty things in our house. Also, I'll tell the security later. If the 3 of you barge in again, I'm afraid it won't be so simple. After saying that, she slammed the door shut. The 3 of them touched their noses. Outside the door, the family of 3 looked at each other and left with pale faces. Inside the door, Xiang Jin turned around and her face instantly turned red. Sister Jean, your family's old Bai is looking at you. Jing Yunzhao teased. Xiang Jin was even more embarrassed. Just now, she couldn't bear to see those three people chattering in front of Pak Yuen. Moreover, she hated Tan Shi for being so self-righteous just because she was his ex-wife. That was why she couldn't help but show up. She just wanted to prove that Pak Yuen no longer had any feelings for that woman, so she wouldn't think too highly of herself in the future. Xiang Jin, just now you. Pak Yuen paused for a moment, reorganized his words, and said, my family lacks a female head of the house. Ah, Jean, without you, I can't deal with the troubles in my life. I wonder if you're willing to be the head of the house for me from now on. He finally spoke. Pak Yuen looked sincere. In fact, the two of them had been interested in each other for a long time, but they didn't make it clear. Now, everything was just going with the flow. I have to deal with trivial matters for you at work, and I have to be your mother in daily life. How can it be so easy? Xiang Jin snorted. Of course not. Pak Yuen was a little nervous. He quickly rushed over and hugged Xiang Jin's shoulders. I'm inviting you to be the head of the house. You help me at work, and I'll leave everything at home to you. I'll cook and wash the dishes. If you ask me to go east, I'll definitely go west. Xiang Jin was moved. She hesitated for a moment and nodded. She had experienced a failed marriage. She thought that she would be alone for the rest of her life, but she didn't expect to meet the most suitable person in her life so soon. Perhaps there wasn't much excitement and passion, but calmness was a blessing. When Pak Yuen saw her nod, he quickly hugged her tightly. Jing Yunzhao sighed faintly. With a cold face, he looked serious and especially deep. Brothers and sisters, there's a minor in the house. Please watch your manners. Chapter 973. Jing Yunzhao's teasing made by Yuan and Xiang Jin wished they could find a hole to crawl into. At the same time, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were both experienced people, yet they were being mocked by a little girl until their faces and ears turned red. Jing Yunzhao smiled brightly. Xiang Jin wasn't a woman who couldn't let go. After a while, she started to joke with Jing Yunzhao. The house was full of laughter. As for the Tan family who left, they sat in a taxi with gloomy faces. The atmosphere in the car was gloomy and the family of three didn't look good. Say, you don't even know how to tidy up properly before going out. If I were Bai Yuan, would also take a fancy to that Xiang Jin and not you. Father Tan said in a strange tone. Tan Shi felt wronged. She had specially dressed up today and spent money to buy a new set of makeup, clothes, and perfume. She was afraid that she would meet that little girl and say that her clothes were of inferior quality. However, she wasn't young anymore. No matter how she dressed up, she couldn't look like a 20-year-old girl. What could she do? What sin have you committed? Pak Yuen is such a good man. Why didn't you grab hold of him back then? If you could hold on at that time, wouldn't you be a rich man's wife now? You can buy anything you want then. Now, Xiang Jin is one step ahead of you. Look at that woman. She's not much younger and prettier than you, but she took advantage of you. Just thinking about it makes me angry. Mother Tan said angrily. Although their family was from the capital, they weren't rich. Their house was old and not very close to the city, so their daughter usually lived outside. However, Pak Yuen was just a boy from another city. As a local, they naturally despised him. After all, with Tan Shi's beauty and virtue, it was possible for her to marry into a rich family. At this time, Tan Shi was angry. She was angry at herself for not being strong enough. She was angry at Xiang Jin for stealing her love, but she was also angry at her parents. Can you stop talking about it? Every time I went back to my parents' home, you would say that Pak Yuen was not good at all. You didn't want me to continue living with him. Weren't you in favor of the divorce? He couldn't wait for me to draw a clear line between Pak Yuen and me. How could he not hate me? Tan, she retorted. She lowered her head and looked at her new outfit. Her heart ached. She had to reduce her expenses this month. You blame us. Aren't we doing this for your sake? At that time, who knew that Pak Yuen would be like this? Moreover, if you were really a chaste woman, you wouldn't do anything even if we put a knife to your neck. Besides, you were pregnant with Fan Lichin's child at that time. Even if we didn't drag you away, Pak Yuen would definitely not want you. Who knew that you would be so useless? It's fine if you don't have Pak Yuen, but you can't even hold on to Fan Lichin. Mother Tan was angry and did not choose her words carefully. Tan Shi gave birth to 2 sons for Fan Lichin. Logically speaking, she should have taken all the benefits. As long as she could seize the opportunity, Fan Lichin would divorce his wife and remarry for the sake of the children. However, Tan Shi was not that shrewd. When Fan Lichin casually said that he would bring the children back to the Fan family to meet the family, she agreed without hesitation. In the end, that Fan never gave the children away. She couldn't sue him even if she wanted to. After all, even if she spent money to go to court, the result would be the same. The Fan family was more capable of raising the children, and Tan Shi's character was not good. Whether it was material or mental, she was not as good as the Fan family. Chapter 974. At this moment, Tan Shi's parents were in a bad mood. Tan Shi was already agitated, and now that her parents said this, she couldn't stop her tears from flowing. The taxi driver also heard the gist of it, and he more or less knew what kind of people this family was. He felt some disdain in his heart, especially when he saw how unreasonable and materialistic her parents were. He felt that it was no wonder their daughter was like this. In the end, he couldn't listen to it anymore and abandoned them halfway. He didn't even have the mood to pick them up. When the Tan family came out, Fan Lichin had already received the news, and he sneered. He wanted Tan Shi to cause trouble and make Pak Yuen unhappy, but he didn't expect her to be so daring. She actually brought a gift and dressed up so beautifully. Cause trouble. In his opinion, it was more like she wanted to talk about old things and start over. Sure enough, a woman like Tan Shi couldn't be trusted even if she had been unfaithful once. However, he had already thought of this and even intended for her to do so. After all, he had Tan Shi's son in his hands, and he knew the Tan family's greed very well. If he could make Tan Shi betray Pak Yuen once, she could do it a second time. However, he didn't expect Pak Yuen to be so calm and unmoved after seeing the woman he once loved. After a while, Fan Lichin called Tan Shi. When she saw the name displayed on the screen, Tan Shi's entire body trembled. She hesitated for a long time before picking up. Hello. Boss Fan. The woman's voice was hoarse and slightly nasal. It was obvious that she had just cried. Fan Lichin laughed mockingly. As the saying goes, is heartless. How much could her tears be worth? It's been hard on you today. I'll take you to the hotel for a meal. The usual place. Come over immediately. Fan Lichin spoke casually like a god, but he controlled Tan Shi's state of mind. Tan Shi followed her parents' instructions and turned on the speaker, so the other two heard everything clearly. They hurriedly poked her body and motioned for her to quickly agree. Although Tan Shi didn't understand what was going on, she still agreed after thinking about it. Look, this man's possessiveness will increase after he has a competitor. He's just asking for it. Mother Tan sneered. But Mom, what can he do with me? They just took my house back. I don't even have a place to live now. Tan Shi frowned and said. Are you stupid? Wasn't it better to have nowhere to stay? Act coquettishly with him, and maybe he'll take you home. At that time, you can also see my two precious grandsons. Tanshi's mother poked Tanshi's temple hard. Tanshi pursed her lips and nodded in response, feeling wronged. She had no backbone at all. Fortunately, Tanshi wore a beautiful outfit today, so she didn't need to change her clothes. She took a taxi and rushed to the rendezvous location. She knew the usual place that Fan Li-chin spoke of. She would never forget it. It was a high-class hotel, the place where Fan Li-chin often took her. The place was decorated with gold and jade, making people feel as if they were living in a dream. Because of this, it made it easier for her to lose her mind. Soon, they arrived. Fan Li-chin was already waiting inside. Exquisite dishes and red wine were ordered on the table. The decorative candlelight flickered, and the melodious sound of the cello was deep and mellow. It made people's hearts float. "Brother Fan." Tanshi carefully called out. Fan Li-chin smiled slightly. "All right, don't say anything. Sit down and drink with me." Tanshi nodded and carefully picked up the wine glass. The swaying red liquid exuded an intoxicating fragrance. She took a light sip and tried to maintain the best posture as a woman. Chapter 975. Tanshi didn't know how much she drank. On the other side of the red candlelight was the dream that she had once betrayed the man she loved the most. She wanted to live a stress-free life. She wanted to wake up in a room with a sea view every morning and enjoy life while looking at the scenery outside. She didn't want to hear the voices of her parents complaining that her husband wasn't good enough. It seemed that after a few drinks, she felt dizzy. The man who symbolized her dream was magnified in front of her eyes. He supported her and staggered into the elevator. When they got into the room, she was afraid that he would be unhappy, so she smiled and called his name. She tried her best to please him and make him happy as much as possible. The world was dark. She felt dizzy and her memory was hazy. When she opened her eyes again, it was an unfamiliar room. It was so white that it was dazzling. After thinking carefully, she should still be in the hotel. She took a deep breath and turned around. However, this movement gave her a shock. She only felt waves of tearing pain coming from her body, as if her body was about to break. After trying her best to get up, she suddenly saw the shocking mess in the room. Thinking carefully, she couldn't remember what happened. The room was filled with a messy smell. The smell wasn't pleasant. Her clothes were in a mess on the bed. They were even stained with some dirt. There was no one else in the room except for her. It should be with Boss Fan. Tanshi thought for a moment and heaved a sigh of relief. She had already given birth to Boss Fan's son, so she wasn't surprised. She picked up her phone. The screen was black. Only then did she know that it was turned off. However, the moment she turned it on, a call came in. "Stupid girl. Are you out of your mind? Didn't you go to see Boss Fan? How could someone take such an ugly photo?" Father Tan roared angrily over the phone. Tanshi was a little confused. "Dad, what are you talking about? I went to see Boss Fan." "Boss Fan, Boss Fan. Search for Pak Yuen yourself." The headline is that Pak Yuen's ex-wife has a messy private life and has cheated on him countless times. Father Tan said angrily. Tanshi hurriedly hung up the phone. She looked around and was so angry that she almost fainted. A day had already passed, and it was now noon of the second day. The news was released in the morning, and there were mosaic photos of her. The photos were shocking, and many people had already seen them. There were reports and comments everywhere. Some people were scolding her, while others were mocking Pak Yuen. "Boss Fan," Tanshi trembled. He must have done it. He hurriedly dialed the number, but it took a long time for the other party to answer. Boss Fan, how could this be? How could there be a strange man? And not just one. In the photo, she seemed to be very happy. She seemed to be in a proactive state. That was why she was scolded so badly. But she couldn't remember what happened last night. Even if she was drunk, it wouldn't be like this. Oh, it's you. Did you see the photo? Fan Liqing said lazily. Tan Shi, have some self-awareness. Don't you know how old you are? Are you still a young girl? It's not your first time, so why are you so nervous? Besides, didn't you want to get back together with Pak Yuan? I'm helping you now. Who knows, maybe Pak Yuan will see how good you are in bed and come to you for some more. With a simple sentence, he didn't want to listen to Tan Shi's nagging anymore. Following the news of Pak Yuan's ex-wife's debauchery, he arranged for other things to happen. Now, there was a piece of news that was working hard to rise. This piece of news wrote some bad things about Yuling wines. For example, Yuling wine's brand of wine was a little evil. It was unknown if that wine had the ability to make men lose their minds, but many of the men who were in love with Yuling wine's 7-star wine had their wives cheating on them. He even went as far as to promote it, changing the name of this legendary wine to Green Hat wine. Men were all prideful, especially in this aspect, they would definitely avoid it. As long as he went as far as he could, and then joined forces with a few big wine companies in the capital to suppress them, Jade Spirit Wine Company would never be able to set foot in the capital. Chapter 976. Tan Shi was stunned. She called Pak Yuan again, but she was blocked by Pak Yuan and couldn't be contacted at all. At this time, Pak Yuan and Jing Yunzhao had also received the news and were contacting the media, hoping to control the momentum. The Jade Spirit Wine Company was too glorious now, and its name was almost known by everyone. If this news was allowed to spread without explanation, it would have a great impact on them. Especially this sudden rumor of a green hat wine, it was even more serious. Brother Bai, contact the reporters for an interview and immediately explain the matter clearly to ensure that the media knows that you are divorced. In addition, I suggest that you and Xiang Jin appear together. This way, you can draw a clear line between you and Tan Shi. As for the other news, I will find someone to deal with it. Jing Yunzhao frowned and arranged. Pak Yuan didn't need to worry about dealing with business. Tan Shi had already found another man during her marriage, but after all, it had been so long. Pak Yuan could say that they had agreed to divorce a long time ago. In short, Tan Shi's reputation was now ruined. Helping her clarify the affair would only be beneficial to Pak Yuan. But how will you deal with it? If it was in Ning City, no one would dare to expose this news, but this is Jingdu. Pak Yuan asked. This was what he was most worried about. After all, they didn't have many connections in Jingdu. Many media outlets were very powerful and couldn't be offended. They could only block their mouths with money. Even the interview he was going to do later had to be done in advance to get the other party to write a favorable article for them. In fact, this news wouldn't cause too much of a blow to Yuling Wines, but now they were entering Jingdu. Everything that could affect them had to be removed. You don't have to worry about connections. Jing Yunzhao sneered. The media might not give face to Yuling Wines, but they would give face to the Su family. By the way, during the interview, don't forget to repeat 7-star wine's current glory. This is the national wine that has been recognized. It's not something that can be insulted casually. As for the media that spoke rudely, go back and check the information for me. It needs to be more comprehensive. Jing Yunzhao instructed over the phone again. After saying this, Jing Yunzhao was not in a hurry to wait at home for his uncle to get off work. She looked as if she had something on her mind all day, which made Su Wenqing very curious. However, he wanted to wait for Jing Yunzhao to take the initiative to speak, so he didn't ask. Who knew that she would still remain silent until her eldest brother came home? Only then did she heave a sigh of relief, which made him feel a little jealous. What's wrong, Zhao? Did someone bully you? First uncle glanced at Su Wenqing and asked. I'm not the one who bullied Xiao Zhao. Su Wenqing leaned on the sofa and scoffed at his elder brother. Jing Yunzhao also smiled. Second uncle is very good to me. I have something that I need your help with. Oh. Su Yuantek took off his coat and sat on the sofa. He was also a little curious. Tell me, what is it? Ever since Jing Yunzhao went on vacation, the first place Su Yuanze and Su Yuanqing would go to after coming back from a trip wasn't their own building, but Jing Yunzhao's main building. The two brothers didn't have many chances to meet each other in the past. Now that they did, they would compete with each other. My company has a little trouble. Several media outlets in Jingdu came forward to report some false news. Although this news can be solved with money, there is someone behind it, so it should cost a lot of money. I can't bear to spend so much money. After thinking about it, it's better to let first uncle suppress it with your identity. Jing Yunzhao held a cup of tea and acted like a spoiled child. Chapter 977. Jing Yunzhao had lived with the Su family for so long. Adding on the fact that they were blood-related, their relationship would naturally get better and better. Compared to the distant attitude she had when she first entered the family, she had already changed a lot. Now that she said that the company was in trouble, Su Yuantek was puzzled. Isn't your company controlled by the military? Who would dare to touch it? Even if it was him, he couldn't easily deal with Cloud Spirit Medicine. It's not a medical company, it's Jade Spirit Wines. Jing Yunzhao hurriedly explained, Yuling Wines is one of my businesses in Ning City, and it's developing quite well. Recently, I've been preparing to set up a branch in the capital and shift my focus, but someone just had to bribe the media to expose some unpleasant things. After thinking about it, Yuling Wines doesn't have much of a relationship with the capital. Even if I paid the money, the media might not let my company go. That's why, eldest uncle, I still have to rely on you. After Jing Yunzhao finished speaking, Su Yuantek's hand that was holding the cup trembled violently. Fortunately, the tea in his mouth had already entered his stomach, otherwise, he would definitely choke. You said Jade Spirit Wines. Isn't the boss of that company someone called Pak Yuan? Su Yuantek asked with widened eyes. Brother Bai is working for me. Jing Yunzhao said embarrassedly. The corner of Su Yuan's mouth twitched again. The Jade Spirit Wine Company had brought in a lot of taxes to Serene City. More importantly, her winery had supported a lot of people. In addition, she had recently obtained the title of national wine, which made him a little envious. After all, if the Jade Spirit Wine Company was under his jurisdiction, it would definitely be a big political achievement. But he didn't expect that the winery was also his niece's. Zhao, if I remember correctly, this Jade Spirit Wines was founded 2 or 3 years ago, right? How old were you at that time? And where did you get the funds to start up? Su Yuantek thought carefully, but he still didn't believe it. Su Wenqing, who was sitting opposite him, also pricked up his ears. His expression was one of surprise and one of joy. At this moment, his feelings were indescribable. Even the way he looked at Jing Yunzhao was filled with an incomprehensible mystery. Back then, I bought a big jar by chance. It was an antique. After I put it on display online, Elder Tang of Ning City took a liking to it and received a sum of money. The Jade Spirit Wine Company was started with that sum of money. Furthermore, when I was in the Yang province, I often treated patients, so my connections in Ning City and the county are quite extensive. Also, I met a mysterious old master who taught me a lot of things and gave me some treasures. One of them was a ginseng. I sold it to my grandfather and earned a few million yuan, Jing Yunzhao explained in detail. Back then, she had mentioned this to the people she worked with, such as Du Lin of Yutianxian. She said that the fruits and vegetables in her possession were all provided by her mysterious master. Although Du Lin was suspicious, he couldn't find anything even if he investigated. No one would have thought that there really was an independent space in this world. Moreover, she had chosen Du Lin not only because Yutianxian's business would be good in the future, but also because she understood what Yutianxian needed. Du Lin was a culinary fanatic. He wanted ingredients that could display his ancestors' culinary skills. As long as the price of the ingredients wasn't ridiculously high, he would accept and not ask any questions. However, at this moment, Jing Yunzhao's words greatly shocked Su Yuantek and his brother. What is the background of your previous master? If it were anyone else, they might not believe in the existence of a hidden master in the world. However, as a member of the Su family, they believed in it. For example, the old man had the title of a master. If it weren't for the fact that the Su family's descendants were famous, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a hidden master. Chapter 978. Speaking of her master, Jing Yunzhao smiled and replied, "Master has a celestial demeanor and a relatively easygoing personality. He taught me a lot of things. If it weren't for him, I might still be suffering in the Chow family. However, Master never allowed me to speak too much about him to others. When I first became his disciple, I also made a heavy oath, so I can't say too much about the details. Uncle, please don't make things difficult for me. Since you promised him, it's only right to keep it a secret." Su Yuantek was very understanding. The Su family had 1,000 years of inheritance. Almost all of their pharmaceutical recipes were secrets. When learning how to make medicine, one must first learn about character. At the very least, one must keep one's word. It seems that Xiao Zhao has met a lot of people in the past. Su Wenqing couldn't help but exclaim, "Your luck, no one in the Su family can compare to you." Yuling Wines, he knew about the company. Ever since he returned to China, whether it was at home or outside, he could see the 7-star wine produced by Yuling Wines almost everywhere. Even a few days ago, someone had sent him gifts. Among them were 2 bottles of 7-star wine. It was said that drinking it in moderation could strengthen the body. The ingredients used in the 7-star wine were also very practical. The price was ridiculously high and the amount produced each year was also very small. At that time, he didn't think much of it and casually gave it to the old man. Who knew that when the old man saw it, he rolled his eyes and said that he was wasting good wine and angrily took it away. At that time, he found out that the old man had an exclusive wine flask. Every time, the flask would always be filled to the brim with fragrant wine. Other wines, however, were never touched. Now that he thought about it, the old man's wine was probably provided by Jing Yunzhao. No wonder he treasured it so much. In the past, he only liked famous foreign red wine, but now his niece was selling wine. No matter what, he had to support her. It seemed that he would have to change his taste in the future. At this time, Jing Yunzhao had already said that she was the boss of Yuling Wines. Even though Su Yuantek's heart was still shocked, she had already asked, so of course he had to help. She immediately called her secretary and asked about the scandal that had plagued Yuling Wines. Jing Yunzhao was angry, but he was even angrier. Someone didn't want Yuling Wine to develop in the capital, which meant that they didn't want his precious niece to focus on him. Of course, he wasn't happy about that. He just gave an order, and his subordinates would nervously solve the problem for him. Zhao, don't worry. Before tomorrow morning, I guarantee that all the negative news will disappear. Su Yuantech comforted. Even the wealthy merchants had to consider Su Yuantech's influence. Thank you, uncle. I can rest assured now. Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips and smiled, his eyes sparkling. The two uncles felt complicated and happy at the same time. They looked at Jing Yunzhao with a strange expression. Acknowledging Jing Yunzhao back wasn't a matter of sending charcoal in snowy weather. The more she achieved, the more it would seem like the Su family was taking advantage of her. In the future, the more her reputation would resound, the more benefits he would receive as her uncle. Even though it was a good thing, he still felt a little sour in his heart. They would rather protect her under their knees than see her mature and intelligent early. With Su Yuantech's help, the participating media immediately trembled and quickly retracted the news. Fan Liqin had been watching from behind. When all the news suddenly disappeared without a trace, he was puzzled. He quickly contacted the one he was most familiar with and asked, but this time, he was even more confused. Chapter 979. The CEO of the media company that helped Fan Liqin publicize the cuckold wine had a direct relationship with him. Fan Liqin was one of the shareholders. Although he didn't own a lot of shares, it was good to have a big tree to back him up. Therefore, the media company did whatever Fan Liqin told them to. I don't know about the other companies, but I received a call from the government this morning. They forbade any news that would damage Yuling Wine's reputation. This order seems to have been personally passed down by Mayor Su. Boss Fan, I don't dare to make a move now. If I offend Mayor Su, my small media company won't be able to hold on for long, the company's CEO hurriedly said on the other end of the phone. Mayor Su. How is that possible? Did someone from Yuling Wines find someone to impersonate him? Fan Liqin didn't believe it at all. Yuling Wines was indeed famous, but it didn't have much influence in Jingdu. In addition, he had privately found a few other wine companies to put pressure on the media. Even if Mayor Su knew, he would still give face to those company CEOs. It can't be an impersonator. The person who called to inform them was someone close to Mayor Su, the CEO added. Fan Liqin became more and more irritated. Does Mayor Su have nothing better to do? What else did the government say? They said to put an end to this kind of vicious competition. If such a situation is discovered again, they will increase the intensity of the investigation. They should also have informed those wine companies. Not long ago, the people in charge of those companies called to withdraw their previous intentions. Fan Liqin rubbed his forehead. He couldn't understand why Mayor Su would interfere in such a small matter. Could it be because Yuling Wine's 7-star wine had won the gold medal in the evaluation and the reputation of being the national wine? No matter what, he didn't think so. Try again. Reduce the intensity of the publicity and test it out. Fan Liqin thought about it and still found it strange, so he suggested. This media company had a close relationship with Fan Liqin. Although they were a little nervous, if Fan Liqin got angry, it wouldn't be good for the company. Therefore, they listened obediently and continued to leave a spot for Pak Yuan on the online news page. Pak Yuan had already stepped forward to explain the situation, and the impact of this matter on them was negligible. However, even though this fly couldn't kill people, it was still quite annoying to have it hover around them. Therefore, according to Jing Yunzhao's request, Pak Yuan quickly investigated this online media company. This wasn't a very big company, but it had always been very influential in the news industry. The news it caught had always been more eye-catching. Therefore, whether it was the print newspaper or the electronic news on the internet, the number of people reading it was very high. However, in order to attract readers, the news released by these media companies was more or less exaggerated or inaccurate. The more things they released, the more problems there would be. It was very easy to find out what the problem was. Jing Yunzhao sent all the influential news released by this company to the few exclusive detectives she had recruited. With their skills, it was easy to find out the real situation of the main character in the news. However, this investigation wasn't something that could be done overnight. It was enough to have people to do it. Jing Yunzhao began to focus on receiving guests these days. There were only a few days left before the birthday banquet. Old Man Gan, Su Chu, Gan Jinchen, and even Tang Zihua all rushed over from Yang Province. Chapter 980. Although Jing Yunzhao had told them over the phone that she had acknowledged her family, she didn't mention what her family did. Now that they had brought her to the capital city, they naturally had to arrange for her to stay with the Su family. The third floor of the Su family's residence was very large. It could easily accommodate dozens of people, let alone a few. However, since they were guests, they naturally had to be separated from the host's residence. Therefore, Su Wenqing had been temporarily staying in the main building for the past few days, and the side building was specially used to entertain guests. Cousin, your family is so grand. I'm so envious that you can have such a big house in the capital city. Su Chu exclaimed as soon as they got out of the car. The house had beautiful scenery on all four sides. The house was grand, and there was a courtyard at the back as well as other small courtyards. Many camellias were planted nearby. Although they had withered during the winter, after a snowfall, it looked like a paradise. Since you're studying in the capital city, you can come here often in the future. I'm the only child in the house now, so it'll be more lively with more people around, Jing Yunzhao smiled faintly. Her gaze was gentle, and she had a gentle and noble aura about her. Grandpa Gan looked at this god-granddaughter of his and secretly clicked his tongue. It hadn't been long, but Jing Yunzhao was becoming more and more beautiful by the day. Her entire person was light and ethereal, and she looked like the winter snow. However, when she treated them, there was a hint of gentleness in her attitude. Yunzhao, girl, don't let this child fool around, make a fool of yourself in front of your family. Grandpa Gan was a little happy, but he still had a sense of propriety. Right now, he still didn't know how Jing Yunzhao's family treated her. Judging from the family's circumstances, their standards were probably not low. Jing Yunzhao had been outside for so long, who knew if she could get along with her family in such a short time. Therefore, at this time, it was best not to cause trouble. Moreover, he heard that they had found her grandfather and uncle. This uncle was probably already married and had a career, so he might not be able to treat his niece well. In short, it was best to avoid causing trouble for her as much as possible. Grandpa, don't worry. Uncle can't wait for more people to accompany me. Jing Yunzhao was extremely grateful to Grandpa Gan. Back then, after she left the Qiao family, Grandpa Gan made her feel the warmth of a family member. Towards him, Jing Yunzhao was naturally extremely respectful. Therefore, she said, now that I have a grandfather and a grandfather, it can be considered complete. However, because it's almost the new year, my two uncles are relatively busy. I'm afraid they will only come at night. At that time, I will personally prepare a meal to welcome grandfather. Okay. I haven't tasted your craftsmanship in a long time, I'm craving it. Grandpa Gan suddenly laughed. Among the younger generation, Jing Yunzhao was definitely the most filial. Usually, she would call to ask about him and would often have people send him wine. A few months ago, someone caused trouble at his clinic. In the end, in less than an hour, someone came to help and scared the scoundrel away. At that time, he saw that the person who came was fierce and seemed to be the leader of a gang. He felt a little strange. After asking carefully, He found out that it was someone that Jing Yunzhao had helped before. It was only because Jing Yunzhao had told them to take care of his clinic before she left that they came to help. At that moment, his heart was filled with mixed feelings. It had to be said that although he used to treat this child as his granddaughter, they were not blood-related after all. It wasn't good for him to care too much about everything. He treated her a little differently from how he treated Feng Qiu and Jin Qin. She was a smart person and should be aware of his misgivings, but she only remembered his kindness. He had lived a lifetime, and until now, the most regretful thing was that Jing Yunzhao was not his biological granddaughter. Chapter 981. Jing Yunzhao supported Grandpa Gan while Su Chu, Gan Jinchen, and Tang Zihua followed on either side. They entered the guest room, where the servants helped with the luggage. Since it was her coming-of-age birthday, both families had brought gifts. The Tang family was wealthy, and she had saved Tang Zihua before, so Grandpa Tang would not be stingy. He gave her his favorite pair of antique plum vases. The design of the vases was elegant, and although they were antiques, they were clean and spotless. It was obvious that they had been well maintained. Jing Yunzhao thanked him profusely. She thought to herself that the next time it was Grandpa Tang's birthday, she would definitely give him something he liked. In this relationship, reciprocation was the only way to last. First of all, she and Tang Zihua were friends and classmates. Even without Tang Zihua, Grandpa Tang had helped Yu Lingwine a lot. In the future, they would have to work together, so of course they had to be careful. Now I'm really curious about who your grandfather is. I think this house can be considered an old mansion, right? If it didn't have any family background, it wouldn't have been able to survive until now. Yunzhao, this Su family should be a famous family, right? Tang Zihua was even more curious after entering the house. Tang Zihua had been studying in X City for the past 6 months. It was said that the school not only taught some business knowledge, but also etiquette. The people who went to study there came from many places, and the students who could enter the school were mostly from good families. The school was also very useful. Tang Zihua no longer had the sickly weakness he had in the past. Instead, he was more humble and courteous. His actions and expressions were very appropriate, and he was simply like a noble young master. Actually, Grandpa has also met my grandfather. Jing Yunzhao revealed a mysterious expression. Really? Gan Jinchen was surprised, and quickly asked Grandpa Tang, "Grandpa, why didn't you tell us if you knew?" "That's not right, Grandpa hasn't been to the capital for many years." Gan Jinchen's current evolution was the complete opposite of Tang Zihua's. His skin was the color of wheat, his eyes were bright, and there were even some rough calluses on his hands. The capital's top military medical school had been honed quite a bit. "Yunzhao girl, I don't remember seeing him before, could it be?" Grandpa Gond suddenly thought of something, especially when he saw her mysterious expression. He suddenly asked, "Could it be your master, Su Jingji?" Back then, Su Jingji was extremely famous in Huaning County. All the major hospitals gave him face. Although he didn't know where he came from, that person was arrogant and had a sage-like demeanor. He was definitely not an ordinary person. Jing Yunzhao immediately nodded her head. "Su Jingji is my grandfather." This sentence was full of pride. Grandpa Gon was stunned, and immediately slapped his thigh. "So it's like this. I was wondering how many people wanted to meet Grandmaster Su back then but couldn't do it. Yet, he only cared about and cherished you. So it turns out that it's because of this bloodline fate. Yunzhao girl, you've finally come to the end of your suffering. This Grandmaster Su has quite the standard when it comes to medicine. If you learn from him well, you won't lack anything and won't have to worry about anything in the future." Grandpa Gon was happy and envious. When Su Jingji had just arrived in Huaning County, the medical world didn't know where the rumors about him came from. It caused many people to disregard their age and dignity to bring their children or themselves to be apprenticed to him. Whether it was medicine or medical skills, he was willing to teach them a thing or two. They benefited immensely. But this Master Su's temper was strange. Those who found him were all kicked out by him. Slowly, everyone gave up. Even he was tempted back then, but he didn't expect that the thing that outsiders wanted would fall into Jing Yunzhao's hands. It was really fate. Chapter 982. Grandpa Gon's face lit up with joy. He changed the topic and asked, "Where's your grandfather? Since I'm here, I should greet him. Grandfather is a medicine fanatic. I didn't expect you to arrive so early." The appointment with him was in the afternoon, so Grandpa, you should rest well and meet him in the afternoon, Jing Yunzhao said apologetically. Grandpa Gon and the others had come all the way here, but she was the only one who came out to greet them. However, the strange thing was that woman, Shen Shi. Recently, she had been more attentive, even a little overboard. She always treated her as if she was her own daughter. Logically speaking, when she found out that there were guests, she should have immediately shown up to express her affection for her aunt. "Where's Aunt Shen?" Jing Yunzhao was curious, so she turned to ask the servant. Young master returned to the capital, but his body wasn't well, so he went directly to the hospital. Madam went to visit him, the servant hurriedly said. They knew very well who had a higher status in this family. 2 days ago, a servant had said a few words about Miss Gu in private. When the young master found out, he immediately fired her. Working for the Su family paid well, and there weren't many people in the Su family. It was easy to take care of them, so this job was very important to them. Jing Yunzhao nodded her head in understanding. So it was Su Yu who came back. No wonder. Since it was related to her son's health, she couldn't continue with the act. Old Man Gon and the others didn't understand why Jing Yunzhao would address her as Auntie Shin, but when they saw her cold eyes when she mentioned the 2 words Auntie Shin, they knew that the person must have made her feel disgusted. Thus, they tactfully didn't ask any more questions and allowed the servants to lead them to their respective rooms. She didn't appear for an entire day. Jing Yunzhao was happy and relaxed. She didn't need to play Tai Chi with that woman. A few hours later, the old man came out of the pharmacy. Knowing that her friend and god-grandfather had come, he specially changed into a brand new tang suit and looked particularly energetic. He even took out the good wine that Jing Yunzhao had given him. It was obvious that he valued it very much. The 2 elders were about the same age, so they had many things to talk about. In the past, Grandpa Gon was arrogant and didn't care about outsiders. But now that he had Jing Yunzhao as a bridge, he naturally treated Grandpa Gon with more respect and courtesy. This child is my granddaughter, Chu Chu, and this is my grandson, Jinqin. These 2 children are in the same grade as Yunzhao. They had a good relationship when they were in school, but unfortunately, they are not as sensible as Yunzhao. They originally wanted to learn medicine and inherit the family business, but who knew that neither of them dared to be interested. After Grandpa Gon and Grandpa Gon exchanged a few pleasantries, they slowly became familiar with each other. Old Man Su looked at the 3 juniors and was very satisfied. They're all good kids. It doesn't matter if they study medicine or not, as long as they have good natures. Grandpa Gon was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Because when he saw other people's grandchildren, he thought of his own family's idiot. Their Su family had saved many people with medicine for many generations and had accumulated countless merits. Unfortunately, the Su family's descendant was so crooked that he didn't know if he was reincarnated into the wrong family. That's true. Fortunately, military doctors are also doctors. I can feel comforted in my heart. Grandpa Gon smiled. When he smelled the aroma of the wine on the table, he said enviously, I can tell that this wine was brewed by Yun Zhao the moment I smell it. It's so tempting that the gluttonous bug is about to come out. Brother Gon, do you know how to play chess? Let's drink while we play a few moves. Okay. There's nothing to talk about with this group of children. The two of us can chat and drink, and the children can do whatever they want. As they spoke, the two of them looked at each other more and more pleasing to the eye. One of them didn't have the arrogant and contemptuous attitude he used to have towards others, and the other was less suspicious and careful. They directly started a game on the side. Chapter 983. Jing Yunzhao breathed a sigh of relief. In the past, his grandfather had always been rude to others, so he was a little worried. Now that he saw the two getting along so well, he felt relieved. Not long after, his two uncles arrived one after the other. Their expressions were more amiable than usual, as if they were ordinary elders. They hurriedly stood up and greeted their uncles. Tang Zihua glanced at Su Yuantek and felt that he looked familiar. After a while, he suddenly asked, Uncle Su, you look so familiar. I feel like I've seen you somewhere before. Are you? Tang Zihua's head hurt from thinking about it. My uncle is the mayor of the capital. Grandpa Tang has some business in the capital, so he should know. Did you see me at his place? Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips and smiled. When he said this, the children were shocked. Grandpa Gon, on the other hand, could accept it. After all, this family was not simple, especially Su Jingji's son. He was sure to have a bright future, so he was not particularly surprised. That's right, that's right. I remember my grandfather telling me. Tang Zihua suddenly realized something, and then became nervous. Mayor Su, I didn't know your identity, so my grandfather didn't tell you. I hope you can forgive me. I'll send my greetings to you on my grandfather's behalf. He was serious. He was only 19 years old, but when he spoke, he was very serious and polite. Su Yuantek couldn't help but laugh and waved his hand. Since you're here as a guest, you don't have an official position. Just call me uncle. I don't have a nephew, so it sounds more intimate. As he said this, he stared at Su Wenqing. If it weren't for his brother not getting married and having children at his age, their family wouldn't be so weak. Okay, thank you, Uncle Su. Tang Zihua didn't hesitate. After the proper etiquette, he would naturally put friendship first. He also knew that if he was too full, he would overflow. He was here to celebrate Jing Yunzhao's birthday, not to curry favor with the mayor, Su Yuantek. Su Wenqing, on the other hand, looked at Tang Zihua a few more times. His picky eyes scanned him from head to toe. Age, 1 year older, a good match for his niece. Handsome, fair, and clean. He was still young now, but in a few years, he would be more mature. When that time came, he would definitely be a high-quality talent. In addition, his family background was not bad. The Tang family was second to none in the Yang province's Ning city, and had many assets. The two of them could be considered childhood sweethearts, and there was no age gap between them. They were definitely better than Li Xiaoyun, right? As Su Wenqing thought about it, he took a sip of water to hide his thoughts. At the same time, he glanced at Gon Jinqin. He found that this child was not bad. He looked more masculine than Tang Zihua. In the future, he would definitely be more manly. Although his family background was average, the Gon family was good to Xiao Zhao. If they succeeded, there would be no family conflicts, not to mention that the Su family had the ability to control them. Also, this boy studied military medicine, half military and half medical. In the future, if he did well, he would be able to get a military rank of first lieutenant or above. He might even become a major general or lieutenant general. His future was very bright. Cousin, why does your second uncle keep staring at my cousin Enzihua? Suchu accidentally saw Su Wenqing's eyes and felt goosebumps all over her body. She carefully tugged at Jing Yunzhao's clothes and asked in a low voice. Jing Yunzhao was stunned and raised her head to look over. Sure enough, this second uncle's eyes were flashing with a strange light, as if he was up to no good. He didn't know what he was thinking. Second uncle, what are you thinking about? Jing Yunzhao raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. Chapter 984. Su Wenqing coughed dryly. He looked a little embarrassed, but then he smiled and said directly, I just think that you get along well with your friends. Oh right, do you have a girlfriend? As he said this, he looked in the direction of Gan Jinchen and Tang Zihua. Both of them were stunned, and then they shook their heads almost at the same time. That's good. You guys are still young. You need to spend more time on your studies, Su Wenqing said seriously, not showing any joy on his face. After being reminded by Su Yuanqing, Su Yuanza also remembered that these two little boys had known his Zhao for a long time, so they knew each other very well. It would be a good thing for either of them to be with Zhao. Although there was no shortage of outstanding young people of the same age in Jingdu, with Zhao's temperament, she might not take a fancy to those unfamiliar with her. Besides, these two children were indeed outstanding and ambitious enough, so they did not need to care too much about their family background. The Su family had money, and the Su family also had power. The other party only asked that Zhao take a liking to them. Zhao, if your future boyfriend can be like these two, uncle will be satisfied. Su Yuantek hinted and said with a smile. Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. Tang Zihua and Gan Jinchen were even more shocked. The two of them looked at each other and smiled bitterly. If they had heard this 2 or 3 years ago, they would have been very excited. After all, at that time, they didn't know Jing Yunzhao well. They only knew that she was more special than others, and they couldn't help but like her. But after knowing her for a long time, that feeling slowly turned into admiration. The gap between them grew bigger and bigger, and they became more self-aware. In the past, the two of them were not satisfied with Li Xiaoyun and were even a little jealous of him. But now that they thought about it carefully, that man was more worthy of Jing Yunzhao than they were. What's more, Su Chu told them on the phone a few days ago that Jing Yunzhao was already with Li Xiaoyun. At that time, they thought they would be a little sad, but in fact, besides being surprised, they were also relieved. They had known Li Xiaoyun for a long time. Even if they did not know who he was, they had known him for so long. He had always taken care of Jing Yunzhao. That kind of attitude could not be deceived. They would definitely feel more at ease if Jing Yunzhao was with him than if she were in the hands of a stranger. Cousin, don't they know yet? Su Chu didn't want to talk too much, so she asked softly. Jing Yunzhao was also a little surprised. Why didn't the old man tell his uncle? Also, didn't second uncle see Li Xiaoyun before? Not satisfied. Thinking about it again, it made sense. That day, second uncle and Li Xiaoyun were like Mars colliding with Earth. Jing Yunzhao wanted to speak up for Li Xiaoyun, but second uncle was deliberately pretending to be stupid. She was afraid that even if she said it, it would be useless. Moreover, now that there were guests at home, it was really not a good time to talk about this. Her somewhat helpless expression made Su Chu and the other two speechless. They silently mourned for Li Xiaoyun in their hearts. In the evening, Jing Yunzhao personally cooked a table of sumptuous dishes. This was the first time she had cooked since she returned home. Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing did not have much hope, but after eating, their appetites suddenly increased. Why hasn't Shinji come back yet? Is you seriously injured? At the dinner table, the old man suddenly remembered and asked Su Yuantek. It's not serious. He's just a little tanned. In addition, there are many kinds of germs in Heizhou. She was worried and insisted on checking a few more times. I'm afraid he will have to stay in the hospital tonight. Su Yuantek was also a little dissatisfied. If his son could come back, it meant that his body must have passed all kinds of examinations. However, Shinji still felt that he had harmed his son. Chapter 985. If Shinji hadn't been so clingy, Su probably wouldn't have been so insensible. Back then, he was indeed angry and sent him to Heizhou for training. However, he was the only child of the Su family after all, and he was also his child. No matter how much he disliked or was dissatisfied, he couldn't really send him to his death. Therefore, he had people take good care of him in Heizhou. Su Yu would suffer, but he wouldn't lose his life. All aspects of protection were complete, and he wouldn't be allowed to come back with a messy disease. He only hoped that this son of his could be a little more sensible. He didn't expect him to be like himself or Yuanqing when they were young. He only wanted him to know right from wrong and have some principles when he did things. However, that kid was stubborn, and his bad habits were deeply ingrained. He had suffered a lot, and he didn't know if he could change a little this time. Let Yu tell him before he comes back, lest he doesn't know what's good for him and bullies the girl. There will be more guests at home in a few days, and I don't want him to do anything shameful again, the old man said with a cold snort. Father, I will definitely give him a heads up first, Su Yuantek said helplessly. To be honest, he wasn't sure if Su Yu would cause trouble or not. He had even sent him to Heizhou. Next time, he really didn't know what to use to punish him. He didn't know if this child was reincarnated to collect debts, and it gave him a headache. Brother, you were talking about your golden grandson, right? Old man Gon asked with some confusion. The grandson of the Su family shouldn't be too bad no matter what. He looks like a piece of gold on the outside, but he's rotten on the inside. I'm afraid you'll see tomorrow. Brother, don't laugh at me then. That child has been insensible since he was young, and he's always done whatever he wants. Our family can't control him no matter what, the old man said honestly, and he was indeed a little disappointed in his heart. When his grandson was born, his daughter was still alive. He liked the child very much. After all, he was the only child in the family. He liked to bring him along when he was making medicine. However, ever since he could talk and walk, he was not liked at all. His son was also a troublemaker when he was young, but he was reasonable and could be taught. However, Siyu was not like that. No matter how much he said to him, he would not listen and would even cry non-stop. It was even more so when he was a little older. He would casually throw things at whoever he did not like. If the other party did not comply with his wishes, he would ask his parents to chase them out. At that time, it was just a minor misdeed. Later on, it became a major misdeed. Grandpa Gon was a little curious. He couldn't believe it, but Su Jingji was never a person who would lie. Besides, if his grandson was really good, then most people wouldn't show such a disappointed look in front of others. How old is your grandson this year? Even if he's really immature, it's probably because he's still young. After a few more years, he'll definitely become more mature. Grandpa Gon comforted him. Let's hope so. I'm already old. I'm already satisfied with having a girl now. As for other things, I don't have any extravagant hopes. Su Jingji smiled disappointedly. His voice was a little lonely. The Su family's ability to make medicine must be passed down. His two sons couldn't do it, and his grandson couldn't do it. He could only hope for his granddaughter. However, this granddaughter was the only descendant of the Jing family. In the future, she would definitely inherit the Jing family's medical skills. He couldn't fight for it. Thinking of this, Grandpa Gon glanced at his two sons and frowned. He said, "Yuanqing, how was the result of your blind date last time?" That woman was already 25 or 26 years old. She dressed like a 17 or 18-year-old girl. We only chatted for a while and she started to feel wronged. From the back, others would think that I did something bad to the little girl. Compared to a woman like that, I might as well find a man. Su Wanqing had already prepared an excuse and casually said it. Chapter 986. Su Wanqing felt a headache when he recalled the scene of the blind date after he lost the bet that day. The blind date was chosen by Su Yuantek. Her father was also from an official family, but his power was not as great as Su Yuantek's. The woman was quite good-looking. She had seen Su Wanqing once and liked him for many years. Therefore, she had never married. Since it was a blind date, Su Yuantek also hoped that there would be someone who would treat his younger brother well. Therefore, he chose that woman. However, he never expected that the woman would be so childish. When she saw Su Wanqing, she had a love-struck look on her face. Su Wanqing was picky to begin with. When he saw her appearance and taste, he instantly lost interest. Su Wanqing was a serious man outside. Once he lost his good mood, the woman began to feel wronged again. With snot and tears, she told him how much she liked him in the past few years. She even said that she had collected many of his photos. She took them out of her bag one by one and showed them to him. If he had not promised Su Yuantek at that time, Su Wanqing would have thrown the woman directly from upstairs. Was that a blind date? It did not look like it. It was more like seeing a stalker or a pervert. However, the old man did not know that. Therefore, when he heard Su Wanqing say that it was better to find a man, he suddenly became angry. If a man can give birth, I don't mind if you find one. Jing Yunzhao, Su Chu, and the other children were speechless. They wanted to laugh but could not. Their faces turned red. Of course, this woman has to have a temper, a bottom line, and a backbone. She can't be like my sister-in-law, who only knows how to be a rich lady once she gets married. She can only smile and can't even cry. She has to be able to lose her temper with me and listen to reason. In short, since she is my wife, she must be to my liking. Otherwise, how can I live my life? Su Yuanqing slowly wiped his mouth, extremely elegant, and spoke unhurriedly. The old man was also angry, but he was also proud and arrogant. No matter how unpleasant his son was, he was still his son. He could not just casually find a wife. Just like this Shinshi. If she was not pregnant, he would not have agreed. He did not care about the family background. He only cared about the affinity and the other person's personality. Shinshi seemed to be filial and put the family first. However, he always felt a little uncomfortable. She had been married to her eldest son for more than 20 years. So far, not to mention him, even the servants who had worked in the family for 20 years had not seen the couple quarrel. They had not even seen her lose her temper with Yuan Zhe. He was not an old-fashioned man. He did not think that women should be obedient. On the contrary, he valued women with backbone and temper more. His eldest son was busy with work. Although he was talented, he was not considerate. Normal women would have some temper when they saw such a husband, but she did not. Humph, if there was such a woman, would she wait for you to marry her? She would have been snatched away by others. You are still young. Can you afford to wait? Su Yuantek said with disdain. Big bro, Only men in their early 30s are popular these days. Young boys aren't necessarily considerate. Don't you guys think so? Su Yuanqing didn't give in at all. He glanced sideways and asked Jing Yunzhao, Su Chu, and the others. Almost. There are many girls in our class who are obsessed with uncles. Su Chu nodded. Tang Zihua and the others also echoed. Su Yuanqing was 31 years old. He was not old. In fact, he was at the age when he was emitting the charm of a man. Besides, big brother, tell me. Are you satisfied with your life for more than 20 years? Are you satisfied with sister-in-law? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.